Am I the a-hole for refusing to forgive my mother after she let my ex-husband stay at her house for weeks without telling me? I never thought I'd be writing this, but here I am. This situation has completely thrown me for a loop, and now I'm seriously questioning whether I'm in the wrong for being upset with my mother. Let me explain. I'm Megan, 34F, and I've been divorced from my ex-husband, Ben, 36M, for just over 2 years. We were together for a decade, married for 7 years, before things fell apart. To say that our divorce was messy would be an understatement. Ben had been emotionally and verbally abusive for years, and I only got the courage to leave when I realized that I wasn't just hurting myself. I was hurting our 2 children, Lily, 8, and Ethan, 5, by staying in the relationship. Ben's behavior was one of the main reasons I left, but there were a lot of other red flags. He was a chronic liar, refused to get help for his anger issues, and he wasn't present in the way a partner should be. The last straw came when I discovered that he had been seeing another woman for several months behind my back, while still pretending everything was fine at home. After I found out, I packed up my things and left. It was the hardest decision of my life, but also the best one I've ever made. I've been rebuilding my life ever since, focusing on my children and my own mental well-being. At the beginning, Ben was furious. He didn't want the divorce, and he fought me on everything: custody, property division, finances, you name it. We went to court for a while, and it took a huge emotional toll on me. Thankfully, I've found peace now that the divorce is finalized, and I have primary custody of the kids. Ben has visitation rights, but we keep things pretty minimal because he's unreliable and hasn't shown that he's capable of being a consistent father. Now here's where things get complicated. My mother, Carol, 58F, has always been close to me. She's my support system, and we've always been able to talk about anything. But recently she's been acting really strange about Ben. In the first year after the divorce, she was totally on my side. She saw firsthand how badly he treated me, and she supported my decision to leave. She even took in the kids on weekends, when I needed a break. But over the past few months, things have started to shift. A few weeks ago, I found out that Ben had been staying at my mom's house. This wasn't a one-time visit either. He had been staying there for weeks. At first, I couldn't believe it. I had been in touch with my mom regularly, and she never once mentioned that Ben was living with her. When I asked her about it, she said that Ben had nowhere else to go, and she felt sorry for him. She told me that he had been having a hard time getting back on his feet after the divorce, and that she was just trying to help him out. I was floored. I couldn't even wrap my head around the fact that my mother, of all people, would allow the man who had hurt me so deeply into her home. She knew how much he'd manipulated and mistreated me, and yet she was offering him a roof over his head. I asked her why she hadn't told me, and she said, "I didn't think it was necessary to mention. He's still the father of your children, and I'm just trying to be a good mother to him too." I told her that she was out of line and that I felt completely betrayed. I reminded her of everything Ben had done to me, all the emotional abuse, the lies, the affair, and the way he had treated our family. She tried to downplay everything, saying, "He's a good man at heart and he's really trying to change. He's not the same person he was before." I could feel my blood pressure rising as I listened to her. My mother was so determined to see the good in him, even though I knew deep down that he hadn't changed. And even if he was trying to change, that didn't mean I had to be okay with him being in my life again, especially not in my mother's home. I told my mom that I was uncomfortable with her harboring Ben, and that it was unacceptable. She tried to guilt-trip me, saying that I should be more compassionate and that family should stick together. She even said, "You need to forgive him for your own peace of mind." But I couldn't just let go of everything he had done to me. It felt like my mother was completely ignoring my feelings and everything I had been through. I left her house that day feeling hurt and angry. Over the next few days, I tried to reach out to her, but she wasn't responding to my texts or calls. When she finally did get back to me, she said that I was being too hard on her and that I should be more understanding. I tried to explain how I felt, how I couldn't just sit by and let her act like nothing had happened between me and Ben. But she kept saying, "He's your children's father and you should try to get along for their sake." To me, this wasn't about my kids. I've always made sure they're safe and taken care of. But the situation with Ben and my mother wasn't just about co-parenting. It was about respect for me and the boundaries I had set after all the pain I'd been through. I couldn't believe she was disregarding everything I had gone through just to make Ben feel better. I've been holding a lot of resentment since that conversation, and I'm honestly not sure how to move forward with my mother. Part of me wants to cut her off completely, but I know that's not something I want to do lightly. She's always been my support system, but right now, I feel like she's siding with someone who hurt me deeply, and that's a really hard pill to swallow. So am I the a-hole for refusing to forgive my mother after she let my ex-husband stay at her house for weeks without telling me? Am I the a-hole for going off on my best friend after she told me I shouldn't have a baby because of my medical history? This is a situation I'm honestly still processing. I've been going back and forth about whether or not I handled this the wrong way. So I'll let you be the judge. I'm Sophie, 29F, and my best friend Clara, 30F, and I have known each other since high school. We've been through everything together: bad breakups, family drama, job struggles, all of it. She's always been a rock for me, and I've done my best to be the same for her. But recently things took a weird turn. I've been married to my husband James, 32M, for 3 years, and we've been discussing having kids for a while. We've been trying for about 6 months now, and I've been dealing with some complications. I have a history of medical conditions that could make pregnancy difficult: multiple autoimmune diseases, endometriosis, and some heart issues. My doctors have always been cautious, and they've been keeping an eye on things, but the general consensus is that I can have kids if I'm carefully monitored and take the proper precautions. Since we started trying, I've had a few setbacks. I've had to go through some surgeries, a couple of hospitalizations, and a lot of testing. Every time something goes wrong, I've leaned on Clara for emotional support. She's always been the one I go to for advice, and I honestly thought she'd be excited for me when I told her that we were going to try again. But that's when things got weird. About a month ago, I told Clara that I was feeling more hopeful, that things seemed to be getting back on track with my health, and that I was ready to try again. I expected her to be happy for me, but instead, she looked at me with this skeptical expression and said, "Are you sure you want to do this? Given everything you've been through, maybe you should think twice." I was taken aback. We've talked about my medical history a lot, and she knew how much I'd struggled. I also thought she'd be supportive, given how much I've relied on her during this journey. I asked her what she meant, and she responded, "I just don't think it's a good idea for you to have a baby. Your body's been through enough, and you don't need to put yourself through more trauma just for a kid. You might want to rethink your priorities." I tried to process her words, and at first, I thought she was just worried. I mean, it's not exactly a light decision, and I've never been one to rush into things. But then she started going into more detail, saying things like, "You're not exactly in perfect health, Sophie. You can't just go ahead and have a baby like you're in your 20s and everything's fine." She even brought up how dangerous pregnancy could be for me, saying, "You should consider that your health is more important than trying to have a child." I was shocked. Clara knows what I've been through. She knows how much I've been trying to stay positive and hopeful throughout this process. She knew how much I wanted a child and how hard I'd fought just to get to this point. To have her, of all people, tell me that maybe I shouldn't pursue my dream of being a mother because of my health felt like a gut punch. I tried to keep my cool, but I could feel my anger rising. I told her, "I understand that you're worried, but this is my life and my decision. You don't get to decide whether or not I have a baby. You don't know how much I've wanted this. I'm not asking for your permission, Clara. I'm just sharing something personal with you. You're supposed to be my friend, not my doctor or my judge." Her response was that she was just trying to be realistic, and that she was looking out for me. She even added, "I don't want you to end up in the hospital again, or worse." That's when I lost it. I yelled at her, telling her that I didn't need her to tell me what was best for my life. I pointed out that she had no idea what it was like to struggle with something this personal, and that she didn't understand how much this meant to me. I told her that if she couldn't be supportive of something so important, then maybe we needed to reevaluate our friendship. I was so angry that I walked out of her apartment, leaving her standing there in shock. Ever since that conversation, things have been awkward between us. She hasn't really reached out, and when I try to talk to her, it feels like she's holding back. I've thought about reaching out and apologizing for yelling at her, but I'm not sure if I should. I know I was hurt, but part of me feels like I might have overreacted. On the one hand, I understand that Clara was coming from a place of concern. She's always been the more practical, cautious one in our friendship. But on the other hand, it feels like she was being dismissive of my goals and my desires. I don't need someone to tell me what I can or can't do with my body, especially when I'm already dealing with so many uncertainties. So, am I the a-hole for going off on my best friend after she told me I shouldn't have a baby because of my medical history? Am I the a-hole for refusing to let my sister move in with me after she made a series of terrible decisions and burned every bridge with our family? I'm struggling with a decision I made recently, and I'm torn on whether I'm the asshole for being firm about not letting my sister Hannah, 30F Wyeth, move in with me. I've been debating this with myself, and I've talked to my friends, but I feel like I'm getting biased advice from people who don't know the full extent of the situation. So I'm reaching out to see if I'm wrong or if I've been justified in my actions. Let me give some context first. I'm Rebecca, 32F, and I have a sister who's 2 years younger than me, Hannah. Growing up, we were close. I mean, like most siblings, we had our arguments, but there was always a deep bond there. Our parents, Linda, 56F, and Mark, 58M, were relatively strict but loving. We were taught the value of responsibility, hard work, and looking out for each other. So needless to say, family meant a lot to both of us. However, as we got older, our paths started to diverge, and things have only gotten worse since then. When Hannah was in her early 20s, she started making some questionable decisions. She dropped out of college after just 2 years, citing that it wasn't the right path for her. I understood that college isn't for everyone, but what happened next really set the stage for everything that's happened since. She started to fall into the party scene, and not just the typical partying. We're talking late-night drinking, constantly being surrounded by people who were clearly bad influences, and then throwing herself into one reckless relationship after another. By the time she was 25, she had been in 3 toxic, emotionally draining relationships, each one more problematic than the last. The first one was with a guy who I swear was straight out of a bad reality show. He was charming at first, but quickly revealed himself to be controlling, manipulative, and not at all someone you'd want your loved one involved with. Despite us warning her, Hannah was determined to stay with him. She told us we didn't understand and that we were being overprotective. It was heartbreaking watching her fall for someone who treated her terribly, but we didn't know what to. Tatinduwa. Eventually they broke up after a huge fight, but by that time her self-esteem was shattered and she was emotionally wrecked. The second guy was even worse. He was a chronic gambler and had a criminal record that Hannah ignored completely. He convinced her to give him all of her savings under the guise of investing in a business venture, which turned out to be a lie. Of course, she didn't listen to any of us when we told her he was bad news. He ended up disappearing with all of her money, and she spent months trying to track him down, only to find out that he'd scammed several other women the same way. She was devastated, both financially and emotionally. By the time she met the third guy, I had completely lost faith in her decision-making. He was a self-proclaimed freelancer who lived in his van, and for some reason she saw this as romantic and adventurous. They moved in together, and I saw her start making even worse choices, skipping work for days on end, getting further into debt, and ignoring the family who had supported her. Eventually, she found out he was using drugs, and it became clear that she was stuck in a cycle of toxic relationships, but she refused to admit it. She even cut off communication with our parents because they voiced their concerns. I tried to be there for her through it all, but after years of being dismissed and having my concerns brushed off, I started to distance myself. It was painful, but I had my own life to live. I started a career, met Ethan, 33M, and we've been together for almost 5 years. We bought a house together last year, and I'm starting to feel like I'm finally in a good place. That's when things really took a turn. Last year, Hannah called me, absolutely hysterical. She was crying about how everything in her life was falling apart. Her third boyfriend had stolen her car. She had been evicted from her apartment because she couldn't pay the rent. and she had lost her job because she'd been missing work for months. She begged me for help, saying she had nowhere to go and didn't know what to do. At first I was sympathetic, but then I remembered everything she'd done over the years, all the chances she'd had, all the warnings, and how every time I tried to step in, she'd rejected my help or advice. I told her I would think about it. I told her I couldn't make any promises, but that I'd let her know soon. After thinking about it for a few days, I talked to Ethan, and he didn't want to have her move in either. He's been nothing but supportive of me, and I know he was looking out for our future. He said that having her move in would be detrimental to our peace of mind and our relationship. He pointed out that every time I let Hannah into my life, it ended up bringing chaos and stress. He said it wasn't about not helping her, it was about protecting myself and our relationship. I tried to reach out to our parents, but they were already at their breaking point. They've spent years trying to help her, and it's always been the same cycle: help, let down, repeat. They told me they couldn't keep enabling her, that she needed to learn to take responsibility for her life and her decisions. I understood, but I still felt guilty. After a lot of thought, I decided to tell Hannah that I couldn't have her move in with me. I didn't want to be harsh, but I told her that it wasn't about not caring. It was about her needing to fix things on her own and stop relying on everyone else to bail her out. I explained that Ethan and I had built a life together, and we didn't want to bring that kind of turmoil into our home. I told her she needed to start facing the consequences of her actions and learn how to get back on her feet without relying on others to clean up her mess. The fallout was immediate and intense. She sent me a barrage of angry texts, accusing me of being selfish and of abandoning her when she needed me most. She said I was no better than our parents and that I was just like them, only concerned about my perfect little life and not about family. She told me that she would never forgive me and that I was no better than a stranger to her now. It was heart-wrenching, but honestly, a part of me felt relief. I knew this was the right decision, but it still stung. A few months have passed since then and I haven't heard from her. She's been posting on social media, often with passive-aggressive comments about how people who abandon their family aren't real family at all. It's painful, but I'm trying not to let it get to me. The truth is, I feel like I've tried everything I can. I've been there for her, time and time again, and I've seen her reject every chance she's been given. It hurts, but I don't know how much more I can give without losing myself in the process. So, am I the a-hole for refusing to let my sister move in with me after she made a series of terrible decisions and burned every bridge with our family? Am I the a-hole for keeping my estranged father out of my wedding after he abandoned me and my mum for years? This is something that's been weighing heavily on me for the past few months. I've been going back and forth in my head about whether I'm making the right decision, but after everything that's happened, I'm beginning to wonder if I'm just holding on to a grudge. So I'm reaching out here to see if I'm overreacting or if I have every right to feel the way I do. To start with some background, I'm Olivia, 28F, and I grew up with a single mom, Sarah, 52F. My dad, James, 55ME, left when I was 8 years old. I didn't know all the details at the time, but I found out years later that he had been cheating on my mum with a woman at work for quite a while. The moment he was confronted, he didn't fight for our family. Instead, he packed his bags and walked out the door without a second thought. He didn't even try to explain himself to me, let alone apologize to my mom. For a long time, I was devastated. I didn't understand how my dad could leave us, how he could just disappear from my life without so much as a word. My mom tried to explain things as best she could, but I was too young to really grasp the full scope of it. What made it worse was that James didn't make any effort to see me after he left. He just vanished. No birthday cards, no calls, no visits. It was as though I never existed to him. For years, my mom worked tirelessly to provide for me and give me everything she could. She never once complained, and while there were tough times, we always made it through together. I know it wasn't easy for her. She worked long hours and went without so many things so I could have a decent childhood, but she did it with grace, and I always admired her for that. I often wondered what I did wrong that made my dad want to leave, but as I got older, I started to realize it wasn't my fault. I was 14 when I started to finally process everything. That was when I stopped waiting for James to show up. I stopped hoping he would come back and apologize, and I started to accept that my family, the one that was just me and my mum, was all I needed. Things were good. My mum and I grew closer, and she was both a mother and a father figure to me. I didn't need anyone else. Fast forward to when I was 22, and I got a phone call from James out of the blue. It had been over a decade since I had heard anything from him. I thought it was a prank at first. He left me a message on my voicemail saying that he had been thinking about me and wanted to get back in touch. He was asking for forgiveness and wanted to make amends. When I listened to the message, I was furious. I didn't know what to think. How could he just waltz back into my life after abandoning me for all those years? I didn't return his call. I didn't want anything to do with him. But James didn't give up. He kept calling, leaving more messages, telling me how much he regretted everything. He said he had changed, that he wanted to meet up and talk. I was angry at him, but a part of me was curious. Was this some kind of manipulation? Was he just trying to ease his own guilt, or did he genuinely want to rebuild our relationship? Eventually, I agreed to meet with him. We met at a coffee shop, and honestly, it was one of the most uncomfortable experiences of my life. He was full of apologies, and while some of it seemed sincere, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was mostly doing this for himself. He said he had a new family now, and that he wanted me to be a part of it. He had remarried a few years after he left my mom, and he had 2 young children with his new wife, Laura, 45F. I'm not going to lie. It was hard for me to hear him talk about his new family. The more he talked about them, the angrier I became. I didn't understand how he could just move on so easily, leaving me behind, but I tried to keep it together. I listened, and I even tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. I told him that I wasn't ready to forgive him, but that I was willing to take small steps toward rebuilding our relationship. For a while, things seemed to improve. We met a few more times, and while it was awkward, I felt like I was slowly letting go of the anger. But the more I got to know James, the more I realized that he hadn't really changed. He still had this self-centered attitude, and I could tell that he was only reaching out to me because of his guilt, not because he wanted a true relationship with me. He wasn't the father I had imagined would come back into my life. He wasn't even the person I hoped he would be. Then came the engagement. A year ago, James announced that he was going to be remarried to Laura and that they wanted me to come to the wedding. I was shocked. Why would he expect me to celebrate his marriage after everything he had done to my mom and me? I knew it wasn't the right time for me, and I said as much. But James pushed again. He said that I was his daughter, and he wanted me there to witness his second chance at happiness. I told him I wasn't ready for that, and I definitely wasn't going to support their marriage. That's when things really started to deteriorate. James started getting defensive. He said I was holding on to the past, that I needed to forgive him and let go of my grudge. He accused me of being selfish and of not caring about him. My mom got involved, and she was furious when she found out James wanted me to go to his wedding. She told me that I didn't owe him anything, that I had already dealt with his abandonment, and that I shouldn't feel guilty for cutting him out. That brings us to my wedding. I've been with my fiancé, Ben, 32M, for almost 3 years, and we're planning to get married this summer. Ben has been incredibly supportive through all of this. When I told him that I was thinking about not inviting James to our wedding, Ben was on my side. He said that I shouldn't feel pressured to invite someone who had hurt me so deeply. But it's complicated. James kept calling, texting and sending me messages about how he couldn't believe I was excluding him from such an important day in my life. He said I was acting childish and that I was punishing him for mistakes he made in the past. He told me that I would regret it if I didn't give him a chance to be there. He also said that my mother was poisoning my mind against him and that I was letting her control my decisions. I'm torn. I don't want to hurt anyone, but I'm finding it hard to want to include a man who was never there for me. I've already been through so much with him, and I'm just not sure if I can let him back in, especially not for something as significant as my wedding. At the same time, a part of me feels guilty. Am I just holding on to old wounds and refusing to forgive? So, am I the a-hole for keeping my estranged father out of my wedding after he abandoned me and my mum for years? Am I the a-hole for taking my ex's money and blocking him from seeing our son after he left me for his co-worker? This is a long one, but I'm hoping I can get some perspective because right now I'm feeling like I'm in the middle of a storm, and I don't know if I'm standing my ground or just sinking deeper. I'm Samantha, 30F, and I have a son, Lucas, 5. I was married to David, 34M, for 7 years. Our relationship wasn't perfect, but we were happy for the most part. We had built a life together, and I thought we were in a good place. We had our struggles. Who doesn't? But I never once thought he'd leave me for someone else. Our problems began about a year ago when David started working at a new company. He began spending more time at work, sometimes staying late or going in on weekends. He said it was just the nature of his job, and honestly, I trusted him. David and I have always had an open and communicative relationship. At least that's what I thought. About 6 months ago, things started changing. David became distant. He'd get home late, and when I asked him how his day was, he'd give me short answers. Our intimacy slowed down, and I started to feel like something was off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. One day I came home early from running errands, and I found David's phone on the counter. His screen was unlocked. He never locked his phone, so this didn't seem out of the ordinary. I started scrolling through his messages, and that's when I found it. He had been texting a co-worker, Nina, 27F, and the conversations were more than friendly. They were flirtatious. I saw one message where he'd written, "I can't stop thinking about you. I want to be with you." My stomach dropped. I felt like the world had just collapsed around me. I confronted him immediately. And, of course, he denied everything at first. But the more I pressed him, the more he started to crack. He admitted that he had developed feelings for Nina, but he swore it wasn't physical yet. He told me that he was confused and didn't know what to do. He kept apologizing, telling me how much he loved me, but I didn't know if I could believe any of it. His face, the way he spoke, it all felt rehearsed. A week after that conversation, David came to me and told me that he had made the decision to leave me for Nina. He said it was over between us and that he couldn't keep pretending. I was blindsided, completely blindsided. We had been together for nearly a decade, and now he was telling me he was done. He didn't want to try to fix things. He didn't want counseling. He just didn't want to be with me anymore. I begged him to reconsider, but he was resolute. He said he needed space, that he felt a stronger connection with Nina than he did with me. I was a wreck, but I knew I had to focus on Lucas. He was too young to understand everything that was happening. But I wasn't about to let David just walk away from his responsibilities. David moved out, and the first few weeks were pure hell. I had to deal with a child who was asking where his daddy was every single day, and I had to try to hold myself together, even though I felt like I was falling apart. But what truly hit me was when David stopped making an effort to see Lucas. At first he'd visit once a week, and then it was every other week, and soon it became once a month. I couldn't understand it. He'd promised me he'd always be there for his son, but now he couldn't even be bothered to show up for him. After a few months of this, I was done. I had tried to reach out, to talk to him about being more involved. But his responses were cold and dismissive. I wasn't going to beg him to be a father to his child. That's when I decided to take action. I know it sounds harsh, but I called him and told him that if he wasn't going to make an effort to be there for Lucas, I was going to cut him off completely. I told him that I would be taking full custody, and that I didn't want him involved in our son's life, unless he could prove he actually wanted to be a father. David, of course, tried to argue, but I made it clear that his lack of effort was unacceptable. I also made it clear that I wouldn't tolerate his behavior any longer. David didn't take kindly to that. He accused me of trying to control the situation and said that I was being vindictive because of his relationship with Nina. He claimed that I was using Lucas as a pawn in some sick game. But I didn't care. I wasn't going to let him walk all over me or our son anymore. As a result of this conversation, David said that he would pay me child support, but I had to make a decision on how to split the finances. He offered a small amount, but I told him it wasn't enough to cover what Lucas needed. He argued and said it was fair, but I reminded him that he was the one who made the choice to leave his family, and it wasn't my responsibility to carry the entire financial burden. After a few back and forths, David agreed to give me a more reasonable amount, though it was still lower than what I felt was fair. Now here's where it gets complicated. A few weeks ago, David tried to reach out to me again. He told me he had been thinking about everything, and that he wanted to see Lucas. He was still with Nina, and apparently things were serious between them. But when I agreed to meet with him to discuss visitation, I noticed something off. David seemed to have changed. He was less concerned about Lucas and more concerned with making himself feel better about the situation. He apologized again for everything, but this time his apologies felt empty. I ended up blocking him after that meeting. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't trust him to put our son's needs first, and I wasn't going to let him back into our lives just to play the good dad role when it suited him. I didn't want him in and out of Lucas's life on his terms. David has since tried to get in touch with me multiple times, asking to see Lucas. He even showed up at my house unannounced, which made me even angrier. My family thinks I'm being too harsh, especially because David has been trying to be involved in Lucas's life, but I just don't think he deserves that privilege. I've told them that I don't want him back in our lives unless he can prove he's committed to being a responsible father, but they keep pushing me to let him have access. So, am I the a-hole for taking my ex's money and blocking him from seeing our son after he left me for his co-worker? Am I the a-hole for kicking out my sister-in-law after she mocked my son's disability at his birthday party? This situation is still fresh, and I'm still reeling from it. I don't even know where to start. I guess I'll just lay it out and see if I'm being unreasonable. I, 34F, have a son, Ethan, 8, who has a mild form of cerebral palsy. He's been through a lot in his short life, but he's an incredibly bright and happy kid. He's in a wheelchair, and while he struggles with mobility and some speech, he's a fighter. He loves his life, and we've done everything to make sure he gets as much independence as possible. Ethan's birthday was this past weekend, and we were throwing a small party for him, just close family and a couple of his school friends. We had games, a bounce house, and all the things he loves. It was going to be a special day, and I wanted him to feel celebrated and loved. My husband, Matt, 36M, and I worked hard to make everything accessible for Ethan and ensure that he had a great time. My husband's sister, Rachel, 31F fan, was invited to the party. She's been in my life since Matt and I started dating, and we've had our ups and downs over the years, but I've always made an effort to be civil for Matt's sake. Rachel is, well, she's not the easiest person to get along with. She's one of those people who has an opinion about everything and isn't afraid to share it. She also doesn't have kids of her own, and frankly, I don't think she understands the realities of raising a child with special needs. The day of the party came, and everything seemed fine at first. Ethan was so happy to see his cousins, and the room was filled with laughter and excitement. Rachel arrived with her boyfriend, and they immediately made themselves comfortable, which was fine. But as soon as she saw Ethan in his wheelchair, something seemed to change. She started making a few snide remarks to Matt and me under her breath, things like, "Poor kid, and must be hard for you, huh?" I was already on edge because I could tell that she was uncomfortable, but I tried to brush it off. This wasn't the time or place for a confrontation. Then things escalated. Ethan was having a great time in the bounce house with his friends, and I was sitting near him, making sure he was safe. Suddenly I heard Rachel loudly laughing from the other side of the room. She was talking to her boyfriend and a few other relatives, and then, without any warning, she said, "You know, I can't believe you guys still throw birthday parties." For him, it must be so embarrassing for him, being in that chair all the time. The room fell silent for a moment, and I felt like I was punched in the stomach. I looked at her, speechless, and I could see her boyfriend shift uncomfortably. Rachel didn't notice, though. She was still talking, saying things like, I get it. You want him to feel normal, but it's not like he's going to walk anytime soon. It must be hard for you guys to accept that he's never going to be like the other kids." I froze. My heart was pounding in my chest, and for a moment, I didn't know what to say, but then I snapped. I stood up, walked over to her, and asked her to repeat what she had just said. Rachel looked at me like I was crazy and said, "Oh, come on, don't act like you don't know what I mean. It must be tough for a kid like Ethan to feel like he's part of the group." Her tone was condescending, and it took everything in me to stay calm. At that point, I told her to leave. I told her she wasn't welcome in our home and that she needed to go. She was shocked, and her boyfriend looked embarrassed. Rachel started to argue, saying I was overreacting, but I was done. I told her I didn't need her negativity in my life, especially not on my son's birthday. I didn't care if she was family. There's no excuse for the way she was speaking about Ethan. Rachel was furious. She started yelling, calling me an overprotective mom and saying I was ruining the family dynamic by kicking her out. I told her to go and Matt backed me up. He didn't speak much during the confrontation, but I could tell he was equally disgusted by what Rachel had said. We escorted her out, and she left with her boyfriend, still shouting at me on her way out the door. Now here's where I'm torn. After the party, Rachel sent me a text saying that I had overreacted and that I was being too sensitive. She said that she didn't mean to hurt anyone, but that it was just a joke, and I should lighten up. I don't think I'm being unreasonable, but my husband thinks I might have taken it too far. He's angry at Rachel for what she said, but he thinks I could have handled it differently. He said we should have talked to her calmly about how she made us feel rather than kicking her out, and that we should have given her a chance to apologize. I've been going back and forth about whether I was wrong to do what I did. I know I was upset, but Ethan is my son, and I will protect him at all costs. I don't think I overreacted, but now that the dust has settled, I'm wondering if I could have been more diplomatic about it. So, am I the a-hole for kicking out my sister-in-law after she mocked my son's disability at his birthday party? Am I the a-hole for cancelling my wedding after my maid of honor slept with my fiancé, I, 29F, have been with my fiancé, Lucas, 31M, for 4 years? We have a pretty solid relationship, and I thought we were ready for marriage. My best friend Tessa, 28F, has been my maid of honor since we were kids. We've been through everything together. High school drama, college struggles, breakups, and everything in between. We know everything about each other, or so I thought. Our friendship has always been the most important thing in my life. So fast forward to the wedding planning. Lucas and I got engaged a little over a year ago, and everything seemed to be moving along smoothly. I had my bridal party picked out, and Tessa was the obvious choice for maid of honor. She helped me with all the little details, choosing the dress, planning the bachelorette party, and just generally being the supportive best friend she's always been. I didn't think twice about it because she's my ride or die. The issues started a few weeks before the wedding. I had to work late a few nights, so I trusted Lucas and Tessa to take care of some of the last-minute details. I thought nothing of it. They've known each other for years, and I figured they'd be fine without me. But then one night something happened that changed everything. I was coming home from work a little earlier than expected, and when I walked into our apartment, I found Tessa and Lucas together. Not in a romantic way at first, but they were sitting on the couch laughing, a little too close for comfort. The moment I walked in, they quickly pulled away from each other, and the atmosphere turned awkward. I didn't immediately suspect anything was going on. They're both outgoing and social people, so I thought maybe it was just a friendly conversation. But then I noticed something. Lucas's shirt was untucked, and Tessa was wearing one of Lucas's hoodies. It was strange, but I didn't jump to conclusions. Maybe they had just been watching a movie or something. But I started feeling that gut feeling, the one that tells you something's off. I decided to give them both the benefit of the doubt and brushed it off, even though it left me unsettled. But later that night, Lucas and I went to bed, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I ended up falling asleep, but around 2 a.m., I woke up to see that Lucas was still awake. He was staring at his phone, and his face was pale, like he'd seen a ghost. Naturally, I asked him what was going on, and he hesitated for a long time before responding. Finally, he told me that Tessa had confessed to him that she had slept with him a few months ago. My heart dropped. I felt like I couldn't breathe. He explained that it had happened after a night out, and that it was a one-time mistake that he regretted deeply. He said that Tessa had confessed to him that she was confused about her feelings and that she had crossed a line after too many drinks. I immediately started crying, feeling betrayed by both of them. Lucas begged me to forgive him, saying it was a mistake and that it meant nothing. Tessa, of course, apologized profusely when I confronted her the next morning. She said she never meant for things to get this far, and that she never wanted to hurt me. She kept saying it was a huge mistake, and I was her best friend, and she never should have done it. I felt like I was drowning. Everything I had built with Lucas and Tessa came crashing down in that one conversation. I couldn't wrap my head around it. How could my fiancé sleep with my best friend? How could Tessa, the person I trusted more than anyone, betray me like that? It felt like my entire world had been turned upside down. After a lot of crying, screaming, and trying to understand how things had gone so wrong, I made the decision that I was not going to marry Lucas anymore. I couldn't do it. I couldn't stand the thought of marrying someone who had betrayed me so deeply, and I couldn't look at Tessa the same way anymore. Our entire friendship felt like a lie, and I just couldn't get past it. I told both of them that I was canceling the wedding. I told them that I needed time and space, and that I wasn't sure what the future would hold for either of them in my life. Lucas was devastated, begging me to reconsider, saying he loved me and would do anything to fix it. Tessa was pleading with me, saying she was sorry and that she'd never meant to hurt me. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't marry someone who had slept with my best friend, even if it was a one-time mistake. The trust was shattered, and no amount of apologies could fix that. I called off the wedding and sent out a message to all the guests explaining that it was cancelled. Now the fallout has been a nightmare. My family is furious with me for cancelling the wedding so close to the date, and some of my friends have called me crazy for walking away from someone I've been with for so long. But I just can't get past the betrayal. I feel like I'll never be able to trust either of them again. My entire circle of people has turned upside down. I've had friends tell me that I'm overreacting, that I should forgive Lucas because it was a mistake. Some even think I should forgive Tessa for her moment of weakness. Others say I should just marry Lucas and try to move past it, as if everything will go back to normal. I'm so torn. I love Lucas, but I don't think I can get over the fact that he did that with my best friend. And I can't forgive Tessa. She knew better, and she should have respected our friendship. So am I the a-hole for calling off my wedding after my maid of honor slept with my fiancé? Am I the a-hole for telling my best friend she was making a huge mistake by marrying a man who secretly tried to kiss me? This is going to be long, but I really need to know if I did the right thing or if I'm just being a jealous, dramatic friend. 28F have been friends with Emily, 29F, for over 15 years. We grew up together, went to high school and college together, and always had each other's backs. She's the kind of friend who's always been there for me through thick and thin, so I've always felt a sense of loyalty to her. She's also engaged to Jake, 30M, a guy she's been with for 2 years. I never had much of an issue with Jake at first. He's charming, funny, and on the surface seems like a great match for her. However, things started to feel off a few months ago when Jake and I were hanging out in a group setting. There was a small get-together at Emily's house, and after everyone else had left, Jake and I were sitting on the couch just chatting. Emily was in the kitchen, so we were alone. At one point during our conversation, Jake leaned in to kiss me. It was completely out of the blue. I immediately pulled back and told him, "What are you doing?" He just laughed it off and said it was a joke, but it was so obvious that it wasn't. I didn't tell Emily immediately. I wasn't sure what to think, and I wanted to avoid creating drama. It was a one-time thing, right? So I decided to keep it to myself, hoping it was just a weird moment. However, Jake's behavior didn't stop there. Over the next few weeks, he made a few more comments that felt flirtatious and out of line. At one point, he made a comment about how Emily was lucky to have a friend like me, someone who was so good-looking, and how I was the perfect type of woman. It felt like he was trying to get closer to me in ways that were making me uncomfortable. The tipping point came when we were at a mutual friend's birthday party. Emily and Jake were there, but at one point Emily had to go to the bathroom, and Jake followed her to the restroom. I overheard them arguing outside, and when they came back, Emily looked upset but didn't say anything about it. Later that night, Jake cornered me again and asked if I'd forgive him for the joke a few months back. He was apologetic, but also too persistent, almost as if he was trying to gauge if I'd be open to something happening between us. I felt disgusted and repulsed, but didn't want to cause a scene, so I excused myself. I finally couldn't take it anymore and confided in a mutual friend, Sarah, 27F, who I trust deeply. She told me I absolutely had to tell Emily about what happened, but I was still hesitant. I didn't want to be the one to ruin her happiness, and I thought it could just be a misunderstanding. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I would be doing Emily a disservice by not telling her. I ended up telling Emily everything. I didn't hold anything back. I told her about Jake trying to kiss me, his flirtatious remarks, and the way he had been acting towards me in private. Emily was shocked. She asked why I hadn't said anything sooner, but I explained that I was trying to protect her feelings and didn't want to make her doubt Jake. Emily immediately texted Jake and demanded an explanation, but he denied everything. He said I was lying, that I was misinterpreting his actions, and that I was trying to sabotage their relationship. Then, Emily did something I didn't expect. She defended Jake. She said that she knew him better than anyone else, and that I was just jealous because she was getting married and I was still single. She accused me of trying to ruin her happiness and said I had no right to interfere in her relationship. She then told me to leave, that I wasn't welcome in their home anymore. I was floored. After all these years of friendship, after everything we'd been through, she chose him over me. A week later, Emily tried to contact me, but it wasn't to apologize. She told me that Jake had forgiven her for her outburst and that I should do the same, saying that we were both being overly dramatic. I felt like my heart had been ripped out. I couldn't understand how she could just brush off the fact that her fiancé had tried to kiss me and made inappropriate comments toward me. Since then, things have only gotten worse. I've tried reaching out to Emily multiple times, but she's either ignored me or made excuses for Jake. Now the wedding is right around the corner, and Emily hasn't even invited me. She's told mutual friends that I'm acting crazy and trying to cause drama in her life. I haven't been invited to the bridal shower or any of the pre-wedding events, and I feel completely ostracized. So here I am questioning everything. I've lost my best friend, and I feel like I did the right thing by telling her what happened, but now it seems like I'm the villain in her eyes. Was I wrong to tell her? Did I overstep? Should I have kept quiet and let her figure it out on her own? Am I the a-hole for ruining my best friend's engagement because I told her the truth about her fiancé's behavior? Am I the a-hole for ruining my sister's wedding after finding out she's been secretly planning to steal my fiancé? This is a hard one for me to share, but I've been struggling with guilt and second-guessing myself for weeks. I just need to know if what I did was completely out of line, or if I was justified. I'm Clara, 26F, and I was supposed to be the maid of honor at my older sister Lily's 30F wedding. To understand why this all went down, I need to give a little background. I've been with my fiancé, David, 28M, for 5 years. We've been through a lot together: school, jobs, family drama, and of course our fair share of ups and downs. But throughout everything, David and I always stuck by each other. He's genuinely a good guy, sweet, patient, and kind-hearted. He's also very easygoing, which is part of why everyone loves him. He has this way of making people feel comfortable, and I've always felt lucky to have him in my life. He's my best friend, and we've been planning our wedding for a while now. Lily and I, despite being close growing up, have always had a bit of a complicated relationship. She's always been the golden child, beautiful, outgoing, and incredibly confident. Growing up, everything seemed to come easily to her, and I often felt like I was living in her shadow. But I've always tried to support her, even when it was hard. She's been dating Chris, 31M, for the last 2 years, and after a year-long engagement, they decided to get married. Now here's where everything starts to unravel. For a while, everything was fine. Lily and I were excited about the wedding, and I was honored to be her maid of honor. But around the time we started planning the bachelorette party, something started to feel off. It wasn't anything I could pin down, just a feeling in the pit of my stomach. I noticed that Lily was becoming more distant, not just with me, but with David too. She'd make comments about how lucky I was to have someone like David in my life, and I'd brush it off as harmless jealousy. But there was always an edge to her words that made me uncomfortable. At first I thought I was being paranoid, but then things got stranger. Lily started showing up at events that David and I were attending. She'd invite herself to dinners, random hangouts, and once she even showed up at a weekend getaway that David and I had planned months in advance. I knew she wasn't doing this maliciously, at least I didn't think so, but it started to get under my skin. I couldn't help but feel like she was intentionally inserting herself into moments that were supposed to be just David and me. A week before the wedding, I walked into the living room at our parents' house to find Lily sitting far too close to David, laughing at something he said. They were in the middle of a conversation, and when I entered, Lily suddenly went quiet, but David didn't seem to notice anything wrong. I excused myself quickly, but the whole interaction just felt off. It was as if they were trying to hide something from me, but I had no proof. Then the bombshell dropped. It happened during a conversation I had with one of the other bridesmaids, Tessa, 27F. Tessa and I aren't particularly close, but she's always been friendly. We were talking about wedding preparations when she casually mentioned that she had seen David and Lily talking about something private at the bachelorette party. I assumed it was just wedding plans or normal talk, but Tessa's next words made my heart stop. She said that she had overheard Lily telling David how much she wished he wasn't with me and that she couldn't wait for the wedding to be over, so she could finally tell him how she felt. I was in shock. Tessa didn't think much of it, but she knew I needed to know. The worst part? Tessa said it wasn't just a one-time conversation. She had heard Lily say similar things in passing at other events. I felt like my world was crumbling. It was as if the rug had been pulled out from under me. I started to think back to all the weird interactions, the strange comments, and the way Lily seemed to be hovering around David more and more. I confronted David immediately. I showed him the texts Lily had sent me over the past few weeks, along with some of Tessa's claims. His face went pale and he immediately apologized. He told me that Lily had been flirting with him, but he never thought it was anything serious. He hadn't known how to handle it, and he'd been trying to keep it from me. In that moment, everything hit me like a ton of bricks. My sister, my supposed best friend, had been flirting with my fiancé behind my back. And even worse, she was planning to confess her feelings for him at the wedding, which was days away. I was devastated. I was torn. I didn't know what to do. On the one hand, I wanted to confront Lily and expose everything. On the other hand, I didn't want to ruin her wedding day, even though it felt like she was already ruining mine. But after talking with David and getting some clarity, I realized I couldn't let her go through with it. I couldn't let her steal my future, my life, and everything I had worked so hard for. So I did the unthinkable. The night before the wedding, I confronted Lily. I didn't give her the chance to hide anymore. I showed her the texts, told her what I knew, and demanded an explanation. She didn't deny anything. She admitted that she had developed feelings for David over the past year, but that she had been trying to suppress them. She even went as far as to say she was planning to tell him how she felt at the wedding, thinking he would reciprocate. When I told her she couldn't go through with the wedding, she begged me to stay quiet, saying that I was ruining everything, that it wasn't her fault, and that I should let her be happy. I couldn't handle it. In that moment, I realized I couldn't stay silent. I walked out, told our parents what had been going on, and it all exploded. Lily begged for forgiveness, but the damage was done. The wedding was called off. My family is furious with me. They say I could have handled it differently, that I didn't need to ruin her special day. Some of them even say I should have let her have her moment, that I should have kept it to myself and let her figure things out later. But I just couldn't let her betray me like that, not when I had worked so hard to make everything perfect. Now I'm left with shattered relationships and the guilt of destroying my sister's future, all while trying to protect my own. So, am I the a-hole for ruining my sister's wedding? I feel like I did the right thing, but the fallout has been immense. Did I overreact, or was this the only way to handle it? Am I the a-hole for ruining my brother's wedding by exposing his infidelity, even though I knew it would destroy everything? This is going to be hard to explain, but I need to get this off my chest because I don't know if I'm an awful person or if I did the right thing. I've been struggling with guilt for weeks now, and I'm torn about whether I should feel guilty or justified. I'm Samantha, 30F, and I have an older brother, Kyle, 32M. Kyle and I have always been close, even though we're complete opposites. I'm the quiet, introverted one who keeps to myself, and Kyle has always been the life of the party, charismatic, charming, and always surrounded by people. He's also always had a way with women. While I was focused on school and work, he was out dating, partying, and living life to the fullest. Kyle met Megan, 29F, about 3 years ago. She's amazing, smart, kind, beautiful, and she's always been the type of person you'd want to bring home to your parents. She has this quiet strength and sincerity about her that I've always admired. Megan and Kyle seemed perfect together. They balanced each other out in a way that made me think they were meant to be. When Kyle proposed to Megan, I was genuinely happy for them. Their engagement seemed to be everything I could have hoped for. Kyle seemed so devoted to her, and Megan, of course, adored him. Their wedding was planned for this summer, and everything seemed to be falling into place. But here's where things got complicated. A few months before the wedding, I accidentally discovered that Kyle was cheating on Megan. I don't know how to explain it, but one night I overheard Kyle talking to a woman on the phone. At first, I didn't think much of it, but when I heard him tell this woman that he couldn't wait to see her again, that he had been missing her and loved their time together, I felt something in my gut. I was horrified. My brother, the person I've always been close to, the person I've always trusted, was having an affair. It was a gut punch. I don't know why, but I felt this overwhelming sense of betrayal. I was torn because I loved my brother and I wanted to protect him, but I also loved Megan. She was one of the best people I knew, and I didn't think she deserved to be hurt like this. I tried to bury it. I tried to convince myself that it wasn't my place to intervene, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Every time I saw Kyle with Megan, my stomach churned. I couldn't look at him without feeling disgusted. The guilt ate at me. For weeks, I considered what to do. I thought about talking to Kyle, confronting him, but I knew he would deny it. He was always the type to talk his way out of things, and I feared that if I confronted him, it would only make things worse. I also knew that if I kept quiet, I'd be complicit in the lies. Megan deserved to know the truth. She deserved to be treated with the respect and honesty that she had always shown to everyone else. The tipping point came when I found out that Kyle had been texting the other woman while Megan was trying on her wedding dress. It hit me like a ton of bricks. I was watching my brother prepare to marry a woman he was betraying, and I realized I couldn't be silent any longer. I couldn't stand by and let this happen. I had to tell her, no matter the consequences. So, the night before the wedding, I did it. I sat Megan down and told her everything. I told her about the affair, the late-night phone calls, the texts, the promises he'd made to this woman. I could see her face change as the words sank in. Her eyes filled with disbelief, confusion, and then rage. She asked me how I knew all this, and I told her how I overheard the conversation. She was quiet for a long time, and I could see her trying to process it. Then she stood up, silent, and walked out of the room. I had no idea what would happen next. The next few hours were a blur. I was a wreck too, but I felt like I had done the right thing. I had exposed Kyle for who he really was, and now Megan could make an informed decision about her future. I was hopeful that she would either confront Kyle or call off the wedding, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. Megan did confront Kyle, but when she did, it was worse than I could have imagined. The entire wedding was called off. The guests who had already arrived were sent home. It was a disaster, but it didn't stop there. Kyle was furious with me. He accused me of ruining his life and betraying him in the worst way. He yelled, he cried, and then he completely cut me out. He told me that I had destroyed everything and that I should never have interfered. Megan, on the other hand, was devastated. She didn't know what to do. She told me that while she was grateful I told her the truth, she could barely look at me anymore. I had caused her to lose the man she loved, and while she appreciated my honesty, she couldn't forgive me for being the one to expose it. She said that I had crushed her. I can't even imagine how much pain she was in, but I couldn't help feeling like it was my fault. Now my family is torn. They're furious with me for what I did. Some of them say I did the right thing, that Megan deserves to know the truth, and that Kyle's betrayal is unforgivable. Others say I should have kept quiet, that I had no right to tear apart his life, especially so close to the wedding. My parents haven't spoken to me much, and I feel like I've lost my relationship with them too. They think I ruined everything. I've spent weeks trying to understand what went wrong. I tried to help Megan, but now I feel like I've only made things worse. I've destroyed my relationship with my brother and lost the trust of the woman I was trying to protect. I know I did the right thing, but was it the right time? Should I have kept quiet and let them figure it out on their own? So, am I the a-hole? I keep replaying the events over and over in my mind, and I just don't know. I feel like I did the right thing, but the fallout has been so catastrophic. Was I too harsh? Should I have done it differently? Am I the a-hole for exposing my sister's darkest secret at her wedding, ruining her life and relationship forever, because I was jealous of her perfect life? I know this is going to sound insane, and I'm already ashamed of myself, but I feel like I need to get this off my chest and hear if anyone else thinks I was justified, or if I'm just a monster. So here's the backstory. I'm Caitlin, 27F, and I have a sister, Sophie, 29F. Sophie is, and always has been, the golden child. Growing up, I always felt like I was in her shadow. She was the pretty one, the popular one, the one everyone adored. I was the plain, introverted, nice sister who could never measure up. We were always close, but I always felt like Sophie was the one who got everything effortlessly, while I had to work harder for anything I had. Sophie's life from the outside was perfect. She had the perfect job, the perfect boyfriend, the perfect house, and everyone adored her. I, on the other hand, had a mediocre job, barely any friends, and was struggling to even keep my head above water. I felt like I was stuck in a rut, while Sophie was soaring high above me, untouchable. I tried to be happy for her, I really did. But when she got engaged to Daniel, 30, I couldn't shake the feeling that my life was just a sad imitation of hers. Daniel was kind, successful, and handsome. Everything I wanted in a man. Sophie had found someone who loved her deeply and was ready to build a future with her. And the worst part? He was everything I had ever wanted in a partner, and I couldn't deny that there was this part of me that wanted him. I never told anyone about my feelings for Daniel. Not Sophie, not anyone. But the jealousy festered and poisoned my mind. It was like I couldn't get over the fact that Sophie had everything, and I was left behind in every way. The constant comparison felt like it was eating me alive, and the more I thought about it, the more I became convinced that I would never be as happy as she was. Things came to a head during Sophie's wedding. The build-up to it was unbearable. For me, I had to watch as everyone fawned over Sophie and Daniel, planning their dream wedding, their dream life together. I kept pretending to be excited and supportive, but inside I was seething. When the wedding day finally arrived, I couldn't help but feel like I was trapped in this lie, this facade of happiness, when in reality, all I wanted was to break everything apart. That's when I found out the secret. I don't know if I should be relieved that I know the truth or disgusted that I used it the way I did. But during the week leading up to the wedding, I found out that Sophie wasn't as perfect as everyone thought. She had been hiding something from everyone, something that had the potential to destroy her entire relationship. I accidentally overheard a conversation between Sophie and her best friend Ava. Sophie was panicking, and Ava was trying to calm her down. I couldn't make out every word, but I caught enough to understand that Sophie had been having an affair with someone at work. Not just any affair, but a full-blown long-term relationship with a man named David, 35mm. This affair had been going on for over a year, and Sophie had even considered leaving Daniel for him. Sophie had convinced herself that she didn't love Daniel anymore, but David was just a temporary escape. She didn't want to hurt Daniel, so she had kept it all a secret. But when the wedding came closer, Sophie realized that she couldn't live with the guilt, and she was trying to figure out how to tell Daniel the truth. She didn't know how to end things with David, and she was terrified of losing everything. That moment felt like a weight had been lifted off my chest. I suddenly felt powerful, powerful enough to do something I knew I would regret. The jealousy. The years of feeling overshadowed, it all came rushing to the surface. I felt like this was my moment. This was my chance to finally take control. On the night before the wedding, I decided to confront Sophie. I was furious with her. How could she betray Daniel like that? How could she have this perfect life and ruin everything with a stupid affair? I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was helping. I had the perfect weapon to destroy her life. So, I told Daniel. I didn't even hesitate. I went to him the night before the wedding and spilled everything. The affair, Sophie's, lies, everything. I could see his face go pale as I told him, and I could feel a sick sense of satisfaction inside me as I watched his world crumble. I thought it was justice. I thought he deserved to know the truth before marrying a woman who was lying to him. The worst part? I didn't even consider the consequences for Sophie. I didn't care about the fallout. I didn't care that I was ruining everything. I was too consumed by my own bitterness. The next day, Sophie found out what I had done. She was devastated. Daniel didn't show up to the wedding, and Sophie's dream day was shattered. She was left standing in front of her guests, in her wedding dress, with her entire world falling apart around her. I've never seen her look so broken. She didn't speak to me for weeks. When she finally did, it was to tell me that I had destroyed her. She told me that I was a horrible person for doing what I did, and that I had ruined her life. She said I had always been jealous of her, and that this was the ultimate betrayal. She called me selfish, cruel, and heartless. I tried to apologize, but it was too late. Daniel left her. Sophie lost everything, and now I have no sister, no relationship, and no one to blame but myself. I know that I ruined her life out of pure jealousy, and I don't know how I'll ever live with what I did. So am I the a-hole? I know I hurt Sophie, but at the time, it felt like the only way I could feel like I mattered. I thought I was doing the right thing by exposing the truth, but now I'm not so sure. Did I go too far? Was there another way? Am I the a-hole for betraying my best friend's trust, ruining her relationship and almost destroying her career, all because I was jealous of her success? This is going to sound horrible, and I can't believe I'm even admitting this. I honestly don't know what I was thinking, but I'm desperate for some perspective on whether I'm as awful as I feel right now. So I'm Lily, 28F, and I've had a best friend, Emily, 29F, for as long as I can remember. Emily and I grew up together, went to the same school, shared everything, and were basically inseparable. I loved her like a sister, and we always had each other's backs. But things started to change when we graduated college and started going in different directions. Emily always had it together. She was incredibly driven, super talented, and had this way of making everything look easy. She got a job at a high-powered marketing firm right out of school and quickly rose through the ranks. Her career took off, and people started to take notice. She was on track to become one of the top marketing executives in the industry. Meanwhile, I was stuck in a mediocre job at a small, underperforming company, trying to make ends meet. At first, I was so proud of her. I loved hearing about her success, but eventually it started to eat away at me. I began to feel like I was losing her to her perfect life. She was always busy with work, always getting invited to glamorous events, and constantly talking about her projects and promotions. I couldn't help but feel like I was invisible in her world, a mere footnote in her rise to the top. My jealousy started to cloud everything. What made it worse was that Emily had the perfect boyfriend, Ryan, 30M. Ryan was supportive, loving, and seemed to adore her. They had been together for years, and it was clear that they were heading toward marriage. They were a power couple, successful, beautiful, and in love. I never really admitted it to myself at the time, but deep down I couldn't stand how perfect their relationship seemed. Ryan was everything I'd ever wanted in a partner, and I was bitter that Emily had him, while I was stuck alone, trying to figure out my own life. I convinced myself that Emily's life was perfect, and mine was falling apart. I hated how she always seemed to have everything together while I struggled. I wanted what she had, her career, her relationship, her happiness, and I started to think that if I couldn't have those things, then at least I could expose her weaknesses. I told myself that I was doing it for her own good, to help her see the truth about herself and her life. One day, Emily told me something in confidence that I'll never forget. She said that she had been having doubts about her relationship with Ryan. There had been some friction between them, mainly due to her intense work schedule. She felt like they were growing apart, and she didn't know how to fix it. She was confused, but was too scared to talk to Ryan about it. She trusted me, and I promised her I wouldn't tell anyone. But that's when it all went wrong. Instead of supporting her, instead of encouraging her to talk to Ryan and work through her issues, I took the secret and used it against her. I had a moment of weakness and jealousy, and I did the unthinkable. I started talking to Ryan behind her back. I manipulated the situation, made him feel like Emily wasn't as invested in the relationship as he thought, and planted seeds of doubt in his mind. I told him that she was becoming distant, that she was too focused on her career, that she didn't care about him anymore. I didn't outright lie, but I twisted the truth enough to make him question everything. I pushed him to the point where he started questioning her loyalty. And of course it worked. Ryan started pulling away from Emily. He became distant and cold. Emily, of course, noticed, but when she tried to talk to him about it, he was evasive and defensive. He told her he didn't know if they had a future anymore. That's when I really crossed the line. Emily came to me for advice, completely heartbroken and confused. She asked me if I thought their relationship could be saved. I told her that maybe Ryan wasn't the one for her. Maybe she needed someone who could handle her ambition, someone who wasn't intimidated by her success. I didn't say it outright, but I was subtly encouraging her to let Ryan go, to move on and focus on herself. Meanwhile, I was internally celebrating. I had managed to tear apart her perfect relationship. But I didn't realize what I had done until it was too late. Ryan broke up with Emily. He told her that he couldn't be with someone who was so focused on her career, someone who didn't prioritize their relationship. He said he needed someone who could give him more time and attention, and Emily was devastated. She came to me crying, saying that everything felt like it was falling apart. She had lost her job prospects because she'd been so distracted by her failing relationship. She was questioning her own self-worth. But I didn't stop there. I wanted to make sure that she truly felt the consequences of her choices. So, I started telling people in our friend group that Emily had checked out of her relationship, that she had been emotionally distant, and that Ryan was right to break up with her. I made sure to spread the idea that her career had come first, and that she wasn't capable of balancing love and work. Slowly, I started to turn people against her, turning her into the villain in her own story. People started distancing themselves from her. She was left isolated, broken-hearted and alone. It was only after everything fell apart that I started to realize the magnitude of what I had done. Emily had lost everything: her relationship, her friends, her career momentum, and her self-confidence. Meanwhile, I had somehow convinced myself that I was the one who was right, that I was helping her see the truth. But then, I was caught. One of our mutual friends found out what I had been doing. They confronted me and everything came crashing down. I couldn't deny it anymore. I had destroyed her life out of jealousy, out of bitterness, and out of some twisted desire to make her feel the pain I had been carrying for years. I was the one who had ruined everything. Emily found out the truth. She hasn't spoken to me since. And I don't blame her. I betrayed her in the worst possible way. So am I the a-hole? I can't take back what I've done. I ruined her relationship, her career, and her happiness, all because of my own envy. I don't know how to make it right. But I'm hoping someone out there can tell me if I deserve the consequences I'm facing, or if there's any hope of redeeming myself. Am I the a-hole for secretly sabotaging my sister's career to keep her from overshadowing me, only to discover years later that I was the one who ruined my own life? I've been struggling with guilt for a long time now, and I've been unsure whether I should come clean or just let it go. After everything that happened, I feel like I can't carry the burden of what I've done any longer, and maybe getting some outside perspectives will help me figure out if I'm as bad as I feel. So here it goes. I'm Rachel, 32F, and I have a younger sister, Megan, 28F. We've always had a complicated relationship. On the surface, it might seem like the typical sibling rivalry, but it went much deeper than that. Growing up, Megan was always the golden child. She was beautiful, smart, and seemed to excel at everything she did, while I, on the other hand, struggled with self-esteem issues and felt invisible in comparison to her. I had my own accomplishments, sure, but they were always overshadowed by her presence. She would always get more attention, more praise, more love. Our parents favored her, and no matter how hard I tried, I was always second best. I hated her for it. Not just her, but the way everyone treated her like she was perfect. It wasn't that I didn't love her. I did. But I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of resentment. I started competing with her for everything. And when I didn't get what I wanted, I became bitter. The jealousy started to fester. As we got older, it didn't get better. In fact, it got worse. Megan went to a prestigious university, graduated with honors, and got an amazing job right away. Meanwhile, I was stuck in a mediocre office job that I hated. But the worst part? She still had it all. Her career was taking off while mine stagnated. She was constantly in the spotlight, and I was stuck in her shadow. Everyone praised her accomplishments. Everyone admired her. I was just the older sister who couldn't catch a break. But then something shifted. I got a chance to advance in my career. An opportunity came up at a big tech company. The problem was, they were also considering Megan for the same position. I was terrified if she got this job, it would be a huge blow to me. It would be another thing that proved how much better she was than me. I couldn't let that happen. I was determined that this time I wouldn't let her win. So I did something I'm not proud of. I started planting seeds of doubt about her qualifications. I subtly spread rumors about her work ethic and abilities to some key people in the company. It was small things at first, mentioning how she was too young for such a big responsibility or that she'd been promoted too quickly. I'd tell stories about how she wasn't as competent as people thought she was. I made sure to casually drop these comments to people who could influence the decision. And it worked. I could see the change in the way they treated her. When the final decision was made, I was the one who got the promotion, not Megan. I felt a rush of triumph, but at the same time, a knot of guilt twisted in my stomach. I had won, but I had done. Say it in the worst way possible. For the next few years, I climbed the corporate ladder. I had the job I wanted, the salary I wanted, and people started looking up to me. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I didn't deserve any of it. I had gotten there by destroying my sister, by undermining her at every turn. And while I enjoyed the success, there was always this nagging feeling that I was a fraud. Meanwhile, Megan's career took a dive. She struggled to find her footing after that promotion fiasco. No one knew exactly what had happened, but she was never quite the same. Her confidence shattered. She bounced from job to job, never able to regain the momentum she once had. And I just pretended I didn't see it. I told myself it was just bad luck or that maybe she wasn't cut out for the industry after all. Years passed, and Megan moved away. She kept her distance from me, and I couldn't blame her. I thought I had won, but in reality I was living a lie. I knew that the success I had wasn't real. It was built on betrayal, and I was a part of that betrayal. It wasn't until recently that things really started to unravel. One day I got a call from my old boss. He said that he had some important news, but when I went to meet him, I wasn't prepared for what was coming. He told me that the company was doing a full investigation into its hiring practices, particularly around the promotion process. He said that they had found irregularities, things that seemed to indicate manipulation in the hiring decisions. He didn't explicitly say it was me, but I knew. The moment he said that, I knew it was me they were investigating. It turns out that my sabotage had been uncovered. The rumors I had spread, the whispers I had planted, were all traced back to me. My own actions had led to an investigation that was now threatening everything I had worked for. The company was threatening to sue me, to strip me of my position. They had enough evidence to prove that my promotion wasn't earned, that it was the result of unethical practices. I tried to defend myself, to explain that it was all just a misunderstanding, but deep down I knew I had no defense. I was guilty, and now everything I had built was crumbling. I was going to lose everything. I had been so consumed by my jealousy, by the need to be better than Megan, that I didn't stop to think about the consequences of my actions. I ruined her career, and in doing so, I ruined my own life. The guilt of what I had done was suffocating. I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror. But the worst part, Megan had no idea. She had no idea that I was the one who had sabotaged her. She had no idea that the sister she trusted had been the one to destroy her dreams. I've tried reaching out to her, to apologize, to tell her the truth. But she's shut me out. She doesn't want anything to do with me. And I don't blame her. Am I the a-hole? I know I should have never done what I did. I know I hurt my sister in the worst way possible, and I've ruined my own life in the process. But I still don't know how to make it right. I'm lost, and I don't know how to move forward from this. Am I the a-hole for sabotaging my best friend's wedding after I realized I was in love with her fiancé and couldn't stand to see her happy? Let me start off by saying that I know I'm a terrible person. I know that what I did was awful, and I hate myself for it, but it doesn't change the fact that I did it. My name is Leah, 29F, and I've had a best friend, Emma, 30F, for most of my adult life. We've been through thick and thin together. She was my roommate in college, and we've supported each other through every major milestone. If anyone would have asked me, I would have said that Emma and I were inseparable. She was the person I'd confide in when everything fell apart, and she would do the same for me. But then she met David, 31 Mem. David and I got along perfectly fine at first. He was charming, funny, and seemed like a genuinely good guy. But the moment I saw the way he looked at her, I realized something that scared me more than I could admit. I was in love with him, not just a passing attraction. No, it was deeper than that. I was obsessed with him, the worst part. I never told anyone, not Emma, not even David. I buried it. I convinced myself that it was a fleeting crush, and I didn't want to ruin my friendship with Emma. So I pushed my feelings aside and did my best to be supportive, to be the best friend I could be. But the more I buried my feelings, the more they consumed me. I couldn't stop thinking about David. He was everything I wanted in a man, kind, confident, and ambitious. And as much as I tried to be happy for Emma, I couldn't ignore the ache in my chest every time I saw them together. They were perfect, and I hated it. I hated that she was the one getting everything I wanted. She was the one he was going to marry. She was the one he was building a life with, not me. Over time, I began to resent her, though I never said a word. I'd plaster a smile on my face when she told me about wedding planning, about their engagement. But inside, I was falling apart. It felt like every part of me was screaming, "This should be me, why not me?" The jealousy took over my every thought. I watched as they grew closer, and every time David looked at her with that adoration in his eyes, my heart would shatter a little more. She was my best friend, and I wanted nothing but the best for her. But I also wanted him. I wanted David. And then the engagement party came. It was a huge deal. Emma had invited everyone, family, friends, co-workers. It was supposed to be a celebration of their love. And that's when it happened. That's when I knew I couldn't take it anymore. David looked at me differently that night. He gave me that look, the one that lingered a bit too long, like maybe he saw something in me too. I was tipsy from the champagne, but when our eyes locked, something inside of me snapped. I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't stand by and watch this man, this perfect man, marry someone else. I made a decision that night, a horrible, selfish decision that I still can't forgive myself for. I knew Emma was planning to make a speech at the wedding. She had been practicing it for weeks, telling me about the sweet things she was going to say. She was going to talk about their journey, about how they met, about the life they were about to build together. But what I did was destroy that moment. The night before the wedding, I told David that I was in love with him. I told him everything, how I had felt for years, how I had tried to bury it, how I couldn't stand the thought of him marrying Emma when he could have me. I wasn't even thinking straight anymore. I was overcome with emotion, jealousy, and desperation. I begged him to choose me. I told him I'd be the one who truly understood him, that I could make him happier than Emma ever could. He was shocked, of course. He pushed me away. He told me he was committed to Emma, that he loved her, that he could never betray her like that. But I didn't stop. I kept pressing him. I told him that it was now or never. I convinced myself that if he didn't choose me, I'd lose him forever. So I kept pushing him, making him doubt everything. And then I told him I would ruin the wedding if he didn't choose me. I said that I would tell Emma everything, that I would expose my feelings, and that I would make sure their entire marriage would be tainted by the lies and betrayal. I didn't want to do it, but I knew if I didn't, I'd lose him for good. David was horrified. He tried to leave, but I begged him to stay. I told him that if he didn't pick me, I'd ruin everything. I was a mess, a complete wreck, but I didn't care anymore. I had nothing left to lose. That night, David called Emma. I didn't hear everything he said, but I knew it was bad. The next morning, Emma came to my apartment, her face pale and red from crying. She demanded to know the truth. I couldn't hold it in any longer, and I confessed everything. The jealousy, the obsession, the way I had been in love with David for so long, and how I had sabotaged everything. Emma was crushed. She was livid. She couldn't believe that I had done this to her. She yelled at me, called me every name in the book, and accused me of being the worst friend she had ever had. I couldn't even argue with her. She was right. I had ruined everything. The wedding was off. David left her. He told her he couldn't marry someone who had a friend like me. He was angry at me too, but he was more disappointed. He told me that I had taken something beautiful and ruined it for my own selfish reasons. He said I would never be able to fix the damage I had caused. Emma cut me out of her life completely. She blocked me on everything, and I haven't heard from her since. I tried to apologize, tried to explain myself, but she wouldn't listen. I ruined her life. I destroyed her future. And now here I am, alone. I still love David, but I know he'll never look at me the same way again. I lost my best friend, and I lost the man I thought I was meant to be with. I destroyed everything I ever cared about, out of pure jealousy and obsession. Am I the a-hole? I know what I did was unforgivable. I know I hurt everyone around me, but I don't know how to live with what I've done. I'm a monster, and I can't undo the damage I've caused. Am I the a-hole for manipulating my husband into ruining his own life just to see if he would choose me over everything else, even though it shattered everything we had? I never believed in love at first sight, or destiny, or any of those fairy tale things they sell you in movies, but I believed in power, control. And from the moment I laid eyes on Max 34M, I knew I could control him. I knew I could make him obsessed with me. I had a deep, almost predatory instinct that told me I could have him, not just in his bed, not just in his heart, but in his soul. Let me back up. I was raised in a chaotic home. My parents were emotionally unavailable. My mother was addicted to validation, and my father was cold and distant. I learned early on that nothing in life came easy, and if you wanted something, anything, you had to take it. I never fell for anyone. I didn't let myself. But when I met Max at 26, he was different. He was smart, charming, successful, and more importantly, he was exactly the type of man I could manipulate without anyone realizing. It started off slow, just like everything else in my life. We met at a work event. He was the head of the marketing department at a company where I'd just been hired. We talked briefly. Nothing special. He was polite but not overly interested. I could sense that he was cautious, guarded, the kind of man who had been burned by a few too many people. But I didn't see that as a wall. I saw it as a challenge. I thought, I can break through this. I'll make him trust me, need me, love me. Over the next few months, I played the long game. I became his confidant. We had late-night talks about work, life, everything. I made him laugh. I made him feel safe. He started confiding in me about things he'd never told anyone else. I knew about his past relationships, his failures, his insecurities, his deepest fears. All of it. I made sure to build trust bit by bit until I was the one he ran to for support. But somewhere along the way, I started needing him more than I thought I would. I started wanting him, not just in the way I thought I would, but in a more dangerous, obsessive way. I couldn't let him go, and I wasn't willing to just settle for a casual relationship. Max had been dating Maya, a childhood friend, for years. They were a well-known couple in their social circle. Everyone thought they'd end up getting married. They lived together in a beautiful apartment. On paper, they were perfect. They had been through so much together, and Max had a deep loyalty to her. That was when I realized I wanted more than just a fling. I wanted to break them apart. I wanted him to choose me. I started feeding him little seeds of doubt about Maya, subtle suggestions about her behavior, about her past. At first I just said things like, "Are you sure she's the one? Or don't you think it's a bit odd how she never supports your career choices?" I kept it all subtle, veiled as concern. I made sure I was there for him in moments, when Maya wasn't. A text, a late-night chat, a shoulder to lean on. I was always available, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, Max started pulling away from Maya. It wasn't fast. I wanted to give him time to doubt, time to wonder. And as he began distancing himself from her, I moved in closer. I became the person he leaned on for emotional support. I kept reassuring him that it was okay to feel lost, to question things. I told him Maya didn't understand him like I did. I didn't have to do anything drastic. I just had to be there. And he began to depend on me. And then one night it happened. Max kissed me. It wasn't just a kiss. It was desperate, consuming, as if he had been waiting for permission to fall. I knew he was still in love with Maya, but in that moment, I made him forget. He didn't even hesitate when I kissed him back. I played it cool, pretending this was just a natural progression of our friendship. I didn't think much of the aftermath at first. He seemed guilty, but also relieved. I knew this would be the moment he'd have to decide. Would he stay with the woman he'd been with for years? Or would he choose me, the woman who had always been there, the one who had helped him through all his doubts? But that's when I started pushing him harder. I needed to know, I needed him to choose me, and if he didn't, I would make him regret it. I began creating chaos in his life. Every time he told me he wanted to talk to Maya, I would get upset. I would cry. I would accuse him of not loving me, of stringing me along. I made him feel like the worst person in the world for even thinking about her. I started manipulating his emotions, making him feel like he was drowning in guilt whenever he was around her. At work, I'd send him late-night texts, subtly questioning whether he truly wanted to stay in the relationship. I made him feel like his entire life was being suffocated by Maya's expectations. I also played on his insecurities. I knew he wasn't confident in his career. I knew he worried he wasn't good enough for the lifestyle he dreamed of. So, whenever Maya would push him about his future, I would tell him he could do better. I told him he deserved more than what she could offer. I made him believe that Maya was holding him back. Max started unraveling. His relationship with Maya became strained. They fought more. He began spending more and more time with me, and I made sure to always be there when he needed someone to talk to. But I never told him what I truly wanted. I kept him hanging on, unsure if he would choose me. I wanted to know, truly know, that if it came down to it, he would pick me. And then, one fateful night, he did. He broke up with Maya. I thought I would feel victorious. I thought I'd feel like I had finally won. But the moment he chose me, I felt hollow. There was nothing left to manipulate. No more game. He moved in with me immediately, but everything changed. The control I had over him began to slip away. The man I had molded into a perfect version of myself was no longer the man I wanted. He became clingy, dependent, insecure. Everything I had wanted from him, everything I had forced him to feel, now felt suffocating. I realized, too late, that the man I had spent years breaking apart to rebuild was nothing like the man I had fallen for. I broke him, and I hated myself for it. But I couldn't stop. The power I had over him was intoxicating, but it came at a cost. He was no longer the man I had manipulated. He was a broken version of himself, and I couldn't stand to look at him. After 6 months, I ended the relationship. I told him I wasn't in love with him anymore, that we were no longer compatible. He begged me to stay, but it was over. I had made him choose me, and once he did, I realized that I never really wanted him at all. So here I am, alone in the apartment we shared, trying to forget what I did to him. I don't even know who I am anymore. Am I the a-hole for destroying a man's life just to test if he would choose me, for manipulating him so thoroughly, for making him betray everything he once cared about, just to prove I was enough? I did this all because I wanted control. I wanted to know that if it came down to it, he would pick me over everything else. But now that I have him, I realize I never wanted him in the first place. I wanted power. I wanted to break him, and I don't know if I can live with what I've done. Am I the a-hole for getting revenge on my husband's harmless obsession? Even though it cost me my marriage, family, and possibly my sanity, I, 35F, never believed in soulmates. My parents divorced when I was 9, my mother cycled through men-like outfits, and I was raised to believe you had to choose to love someone every day. So when I met Jared, 37 at 24, tall, introverted, deeply intelligent, I didn't get butterflies. I got safety, stability. He was the kind of man who noticed when your coffee was running low and restocked it before you even knew you needed more. I thought, this is the guy I could build a life with. We got married after 2 years of dating. There was no dramatic proposal, just him saying over breakfast one day, "Do you want to do this forever?" And me saying yes. He was a software engineer. I was in HR. We bought a small house in a quiet suburb, 2 cats, a herb garden. You get it. The first sign of something off came during our 3rd year of marriage. I walked into his home office without knocking. He always asked me to knock, but I had groceries and wanted help. And I found him staring at a photo on his monitor. A woman, long dark hair, laughing mid-motion in a crowded place. Not posed. Not a stock image. He slammed the monitor off like a teenager caught watching porn. When I asked who she was, he brushed it off. "An old friend," he said. "She just popped up on Facebook." I believed him, at the time, but over the years she started showing up more. Little things. A name on his Spotify playlist, Sadie's Mix. A journal entry I found once when cleaning that said Sadie would have loved that museum, even though we hadn't gone to one in months. A dream he mumbled in his sleep. "Sadie, don't go." When I finally confronted him 4 years into our marriage, he admitted it. Sadie was his high school girlfriend, first love, the one who got away. They dated for 2 years. She left for college across the country and broke his heart. He said they'd reconnected on social media, just as friends. She was married, lived 3 states away. He swore it was nothing more than nostalgia. I felt sick. I asked him point blank, "If she showed up on our doorstep right now and said she wanted you back, would you leave?" He didn't answer. That silence was louder than any confession. Tried to move past it. We tried therapy. He insisted he loved me, that I was his real life and she was a fantasy. "You're my future. She's just a ghost." But ghosts don't fade when you keep feeding them. Last year I made a fake social media account. I used a stock photo, made up a name, and messaged Sadie. I said I was an old high school classmate reminiscing. She was friendly, polite. She told me about her kids, her work as a nurse, her upcoming move. She mentioned Jared once, as a blast from the past, but said they hadn't spoken in a while. That was the lie that broke me. Because Jared still talked about her, still wrote about her in his journal, still clicked through her social media late at night when he thought I was asleep. I began spiraling. I'd spent nearly a decade building a life with a man whose heart belonged to a memory. So I did something insane. I used my fake account to catfish my own husband. I messaged him pretending to be Sadie. I used everything I'd learned about her, from old blogs, public posts, interviews she'd given for her hospital, even her college writing. I copied her speech patterns, her slang, her stories. I was meticulous. At first, Jared ignored the messages, but after 3 weeks, he replied. And then it began. They started talking, then chatting, then full-blown late-night confessions. He opened up to her in ways he hadn't opened up to me in years, told her he missed her, that his marriage was fine, but felt empty, that sometimes he closed his eyes and imagined her sitting across from him. I watched it all unfold in real time. I should have stopped, should have told him, but I couldn't, because I wasn't doing this to trap him. I was doing it to understand what did she have that I didn't. Where did I fail? After 2 months, I, as Sadie, told him I was moving back to our city. He lost it. He started pulling, away from me in real life. He'd stay out later, act distracted, stare at his phone during dinner. One night I found him crying in the bathroom. He said he didn't know what was real anymore. It felt like watching a man drown in a fantasy I created. And then came the night he asked Sadie to meet. I said yes. We picked a time and place, a cafe downtown. I waited across the street in my car, watched him sit at the table, check his watch, fidget, wait. I let him sit there for 40 minutes. Then I texted him from the fake number. "You're still the same, always waiting for something that never existed." He stared at his phone for a long time, then he left. That night I told him everything. I showed him the fake profile, the messages, the number, the logs. He didn't scream, didn't throw things. He just looked at me like I'd gutted him with my bare hands. Then he packed a bag and left. We haven't spoken in 3 months. He served me divorce papers last week. Our friends are split. Some say he emotionally cheated for years and deserved it. Others say I crossed every boundary, that I manipulated and gaslit him, that I broke his mind. Sadie, the real Sadie, messaged me after I sent her a confession letter. She was horrified, said she barely remembered Jared, said she was sorry if she led him on, but he was never part of her actual life. She told me, "You didn't lose him to me. You both lost yourselves in someone who never existed." Now I sit in the home we built, alone, wondering if I've become the very ghost I tried to chase away. So, am I the a-hole for deceiving him, for weaponizing the woman he idealized, for choosing truth in the ugliest way possible? I didn't do it for revenge. I did it to save my marriage. Instead, I buried it, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to climb out. Am I the a-hole for destroying my entire extended family with a single letter, even though it revealed the truth about who I really am? I, 34M, was adopted when I was 5 years old. My birth records were sealed. That's all I knew for most of you on my life. The clean, pretty story my adoptive parents told me. Your birth parents loved you, but they couldn't care for you. We were lucky to get you. You're our miracle. I never pushed too hard, never asked too many questions. I figured they'd tell me what I needed to know when the time was right, except they never did. And I grew up with a gnawing feeling that something didn't add up. Let me explain. My adoptive parents, Rick and Donna, were always strangely formal. They provided everything: food, a nice house, decent schools, but there was always a wall, no emotional warmth. They weren't cruel, just clinical. They never called me son, always kiddo. Never said I love you first. Birthdays were scheduled events. Hugs were stiff. It always felt like I was an obligation they'd agreed to fulfill, not a child they cherished. I asked them, once when I was about 11, why I didn't have any baby pictures. Donna looked at Rick, then said, "Those years were hard on you. We didn't want to keep reminders." Even at that age, that answer made me feel cold. The only extended family I ever saw was Rick's sister, Margot, and her husband, Caleb, who had 2 boys of their own, Sean and Danny. Sean was my age and became like a brother to me. Margot always treated me with warmth. Donna didn't like that. She once told me not to get too attached to people who didn't choose you. I didn't know what that meant at the time. Fast forward to adulthood. I graduated college, got a job in IT, moved 2 hours away. Visits became less frequent, but that gnawing feeling grew, especially after Donna got sick with early onset dementia. Her memory slipped fast. She'd call me by the wrong name, sometimes Liam, sometimes Jake. Names I didn't recognize. Once she looked at me and said, "You have his eyes," then cried for an hour. When she died, Rick shut down completely. Closed off, threw himself into work. I gave him space, then I got a letter. It was from Margot, handwritten, thick envelope. No return address. Just, "You deserve the truth. Don't hate me." Inside was a stack of papers, a birth certificate, hospital, records, a faded photo of a woman holding a newborn, and a confession. According to Margot, I wasn't adopted from strangers. I was the biological son of Donna's twin sister, Angela. Angela got pregnant at 19, refused to say who the father was, and spiraled into addiction. She gave birth to me and died of an overdose 6 months later. Rick and Donna took me in, but not out of love, out of shame. Because the father was Rick. My adoptive father was my biological father. My mother was his wife's sister. The scandal would have destroyed their social standing, their marriage, their carefully curated life. So they made a deal. They'd raise me as an adopted child, never tell me the truth, and bury Angela's memory. Margot only found out because she overheard a fight between the sisters before Angela died. She confronted Donna years later and was sworn to secrecy. I sat with that letter for days. I felt everything: rage, disgust, betrayal, grief, shame. My entire life, I thought I was some forgotten child plucked from obscurity. I had begged Rick once, when I was 13, to tell me anything. About my real parents, he told me, they were unstable, be glad they're not in your life. All the while knowing he was one of them, I confronted him. At first he denied it, then accused Margot of stirring poison. But when I showed him the birth certificate, the DNA test I took against my ancestry profile, proving we were direct matches, he broke down. He didn't apologize. He said, "We did what we had to do," then said nothing else. I wanted to burn the house down. Instead, I wrote a letter. One letter, detailed, clinical, no anger, just facts. I mailed it to everyone in the family: Rick's cousins, Donna's remaining relatives, my cousins Sean and Danny. Every single person who had smiled at me at holidays, patted my head, called me the lucky one. The fallout was nuclear. Margot was disowned. Caleb threatened to divorce her for destroying the family. Sean called me in tears. Said he didn't know what to believe. Danny blocked me on everything. Rick sent me a cease and desist. People I hadn't spoken to in a decade messaged me to say I was ungrateful, a homewrecker, a disgrace. I didn't care. I wanted them all to see what they'd been complicit in, what they'd helped hide. The kicker, that photo of Angela and the baby. I used a photo enhancer to sharpen it. The baby had a tiny birthmark under his left eye. So do I. Identical, there's no more doubt. I haven't spoken to Rick since. He's moved to another state. Sean and I are slowly rebuilding a friendship. He says he feels like his entire childhood was a lie. Margot and I talk once a week. She says she wishes she'd told me years ago, but now, alone in my apartment, I ask myself, am I the a-hole for telling the truth, for turning a cold lie into a burning truth, for taking away everyone else's peace just because I couldn't live without mine? They all hate me now. They say I destroyed the family. But maybe the family was already broken. Maybe I just turned on the light. Am I the a-hole for ruining my brother's life at our father's funeral, by revealing the truth about his real dad, and mine? I, 36M, destroyed my family at our father's funeral. Not metaphorically, not a figure of speech. I obliterated it with one sentence, spoken into a microphone while people were still dabbing tears from their eyes. I don't know if I regret it. I don't know if I feel vindicated. I just know that I don't feel clean. I feel like I've clawed something toxic out of my chest, only to find rot underneath. It started 5 months before my father died. He was 68, relatively healthy and still sharp. Then the cancer diagnosis came out of nowhere, stage IV pancreatic, 6 months to live, if he was lucky. We did the hospital visits, the hospice care, the awkward family dinners where everyone tried to pretend like he wasn't dying in front of us. And through it all, I held myself together. My brother Ethan, 34M, took it harder. They were close. Too close, if I'm being honest. My dad always favored Ethan. Growing up, he was the golden boy, the soccer star, the straight-A student, the one who got Dad's approval without asking. Me? I was always too loud, too weird, too into writing and music instead of real accomplishments. My mom used to say I was just different, but Dad called it disappointing. Still, I loved the man. Even when he was cruel, I craved his affection. So when he started slipping, forgetting things, saying my name with a confused look, like he couldn't quite place me, it gutted me. I was the one who stayed overnight when Ethan couldn't. I helped with meds. I cleaned up when he threw up all over himself. I held his hand when he cried and said he was scared to die. 3 weeks before he passed, he called me into the room, alone. He looked lucid, more than he had in days. He asked me to sit down, and then he said something I'll never forget. I need you to know something before I go. You're not like Ethan, you're my son. I blinked. What? He took a deep breath, shaking. Your mother, she had an affair. Ethan's not mine. He never was. I raised him, I loved him. But you're mine. You're my only real. "Son." I laughed at first, thought he was confused, but he wasn't. He was crying. He made me open the lockbox in the closet. Inside were letters, old ones, from some man named Joseph Reed, my mum's college boyfriend. The dates lined up exactly, with the months before Ethan was born. There were even photos, one of them together on a beach, her visibly pregnant. Ethan's birth certificate, Dad's name listed as father, but in faded ink, Reed, written in the corner in my mom's handwriting. I confronted my mum. She broke down sobbing, admitted everything, said Dad agreed to raise Ethan as his own, that they never told either of us, that it didn't matter because we were family. But it did matter. All my life, I was treated like the outsider. The mistake, the one who didn't fit. And it turned out I was the only one who actually belonged. I spiraled, drank more, slept less, obsessively Googled Joseph Reed, found out he died 10 years ago in a car crash, no kids, no legacy. Ethan was his only biological child, and he didn't even know it. Meanwhile, I had spent my whole life wondering why my father looked at me, like a stranger. Now I knew because I reminded him of my mother, because every time he looked at Ethan, he was reminded of her betrayal. I wanted to say something right then. But Dad was still alive, and I didn't want his last days to be poisoned more than they already were. So I waited. And then, the funeral. We had it at our childhood church. It was packed. Dad was beloved in our town. He'd coached kids' soccer, served on the city council, even ran a small bookstore. People loved him. Ethan gave a beautiful eulogy, talked about the lessons Dad taught him, about how he'd followed in his footsteps, about how he hoped to be half the man Dad was. Everyone clapped and sniffled and dabbed their eyes, and then it was my turn. I stood at the podium looking out at the crowd, and all I could see was hypocrisy, lies, a life where I was shoved to the side, made to feel like an accident, while the actual outsider was crowned the heir. I don't remember deciding to do it. The words just came out. I loved my father. But he wasn't perfect. He carried a secret to his grave, a secret about blood and names and what it really means to be a father. Ethan, I hope you meant what you said about being half the man he was, because it turns out you're not even half his son. Gasps. Silence. My mother's face went pale. Ethan just stared at me like I'd slapped him. I walked off the stage, left the church, got in my car and drove away. My phone exploded within minutes. Ethan showed up at my apartment that night, screaming, crying, punching the wall, demanding answers. I told him everything, showed him the letters, the photos, the DNA test I'd taken to confirm it. He collapsed in my hallway and sobbed for 30 minutes, said I ruined his life, and maybe I did. Since then, everything's fractured. My mum refuses to speak to me, says I murdered the memory of my father. Ethan blocked me on everything. His wife left him temporarily and took their kids, saying she needed time to think. Apparently, he spiraled after the funeral, quit his job, started drinking. I heard he's in therapy now. The rest of the family is divided. Some say I was brave, that the truth needed to come out. Others think I'm a monster, that I kicked a man while he was down, that I turned a sacred goodbye into a petty act of revenge. But here's the thing, I didn't do it for revenge. I did it because I needed someone, anyone, to acknowledge that I existed, that I mattered, that I wasn't just the backup son, the weird one. I was his only real son, and no one ever treated me like it. I wanted one moment where the world saw me the way I should have been seen all along, but now I'm alone. So, Reddit. Was I the a-hole for blowing up my brother's identity at our father's funeral? For revealing the truth when it could no longer hurt the man who hid it, but could still destroy the one who lived the lie? Or was it justice? Am I the a-hole for turning my wife and daughter against each other, just to finally find out the truth about what happened that night? I, 42M, have always lived with one unanswerable question. One night, one decision, one lie. It hollowed me out, slowly, like termites in the frame of a house. From the outside, everything looked normal. A solid marriage, 2 daughters, a steady job, a house with good bones. But inside, the truth was rotting everything. Let me take you back. It was 15 years ago when it happened. My wife Heather and I had been married for 7 years at that point. We had 2 daughters, Marley, then 5, and Emily, then 2. Heather and I were solid, or so I thought. We'd had our rocky patches, 2 brief separations, one after I lost my job, one after she had an emotional affair with her co-worker Brian. But we went to counseling. We made it work. We promised to be honest going forward. That's why I didn't question it when she went on that weekend retreat with her friends from yoga. 4 women, 3 nights, a cabin on a lake. Nothing fancy. She needed the break. I stayed home with the girls, sent her off with a kiss and a thermos of coffee, told her to relax. She came back on Sunday looking tired, not physically, emotionally. I chalked it up to a weekend of drinking and venting. She kissed the kids, hugged me, and that was that, except something was different. She got quieter, more distant. Not cold exactly, just less engaged, distracted. I started noticing little things. A text she hid, a pause when I asked about the trip, the way she said, "It was fine," with too much effort. 2 weeks later, I confronted her. "Did something happen at the cabin?" She froze, blinked, said no, swore nothing happened. Said I was being paranoid, and I believed her mostly, but the doubt never left. It became a shadow in the room, a thing I couldn't prove and couldn't forget. I tried. God knows I tried. I focused on work, on the kids. I told myself it didn't matter, that if she had cheated, it was over, done, that we were happy now, that the past couldn't touch us. But the rot had started. Fast forward a decade. Emily was in high school now. Marley had moved out to live with her boyfriend. Things with Heather had stabilized. We were coasting. Comfortable, if not passionate. I told myself that was what long marriages looked like. Quiet satisfaction. And then, 3 years ago, I found the journal. It was hidden behind the insulation in the garage, probably stashed there during one of Heather's cleaning sprees. I wasn't snooping. I was trying to fix a leak in the water heater. But once I opened it, I couldn't stop. It was Heather's handwriting. Dated the month of the cabin trip. Pages of raw, jumbled emotions. Descriptions of a man named D. Says he can see through me. D touched me like he already knew every scar. D kissed me under the porch light while the others were asleep. I felt like vomiting. I didn't confront her right away. I read the entire journal first, over and over. An affair, a weekend, passion, guilt, regret. She never used his full name. But it was enough. My worst fears confirmed. I copied every page, then put the journal back. But I didn't say a word. Not yet, because something else was in there. Something worse than the affair. On the final page, "I think I might be pregnant, and I don't know if it's his." That date. That was exactly 9 months before Emily was born, and that's when the floor dropped out from under me. I looked at Emily differently after that. I hated myself for it. She was still my daughter, still the goofy, bright-eyed kid who'd cry during Disney movies and bring me burnt toast in bed on Father's Day. But I saw Heather's eyes in her, and maybe his smile. I thought about DNA testing her. I even ordered the kit, but I couldn't do it. She was my baby girl. Whether she was mine biologically or not, until last year we were all at Marley's engagement party. Heather got drunk, really drunk. I was helping her into the car when she mumbled something that changed everything. She doesn't even know who her real dad is. She passed out before I could press her, but the poison was already in my veins. I made a choice, a terrible one. Decided I needed the truth at no matter the cost. So I planted the seeds. I started talking to Emily differently, more affectionately. I took her to lunch, talked about family traits, shared stories about my father and grandfather and their quirks. I noticed how she didn't relate, how she laughed awkwardly. I let that silence grow. Then I did something. Worse, I forged a message, a fake email from an anonymous sender, and sent it to Emily. It said, "Ask your mother about what happened at the lake house in 2010. Ask her who D is. Ask her if your birth was really what it seemed. She showed it to Heather. All hell broke loose. They fought, screamed, accusations flew. Heather denied it, then admitted there had been someone, just a kiss, then confessed it was more, then said it wasn't anyone Emily knew, then refused to say more. Emily was shattered. She came to me in tears, asked if I knew anything. I told her I'd always wondered. She asked if we should get a test, and I agreed. The results came back. I wasn't her biological father. I pretended to be surprised. She stopped speaking to Heather for weeks, said she'd been lied to her entire life. Moved in with Marley temporarily. Heather was inconsolable. We tried therapy, family meetings, but it was too late. The truth had exploded and left shrapnel in all of us. Emily eventually asked me directly, "Why didn't you tell me? If you knew, why did you let me live a lie?" And I broke. I told her everything, that I'd found the journal, that I'd suspected for years, that I needed the truth, that I was tired of carrying it alone. Then she asked the question I wasn't ready for. "Did you send the email?" I lied, said no. But she didn't believe me. She looked at me like I was something else entirely. Now she barely calls. Heather and I are living like roommates. Marley says she doesn't know what to believe anymore, and me, I have the truth, but the cost was everything else. So, Reddit, am I the a-hole for manipulating my daughter into uncovering a lie I couldn't carry anymore? For breaking my wife's carefully built world to finally learn if my child was really mine? For choosing truth over peace? Am I the a-hole for secretly DNA testing my daughter, exposing my wife, and blowing up 3 generations of family lies? I, 38M, never thought I'd be the kind of person who would need to DNA test his own child. It's the sort of thing that only happens in TV dramas, right? The domain of paranoid husbands and paternity court clips on YouTube. But when the suspicion creeps in, when it starts to rot your brain from the inside out, logic doesn't save you. Rationality is a wet paper wall when something feels wrong. My wife Samantha, 37F, and I have been together since college. We met during sophomore year at a party thrown by a mutual friend. She was beautiful, intimidatingly smart, majoring in biomedical engineering while I was struggling through economics. She had that kind of presence that made you feel like you were constantly on trial but liked it. I fell fast. She made me work for her affection, and I loved the chase. We started dating seriously by junior year and got married a few years after. Graduation. We weren't perfect, but we were solid, or at least I thought we were. Sam was driven, the kind of woman who had 5-year plans and color-coded spreadsheets for everything. I leaned more easygoing, but I admired her determination. We bought a house in a decent neighborhood. We traveled a bit. We were the couple others said they envied. We waited to have kids until we felt ready, and at 30 we agreed to start trying. It took nearly a year, and I remember how tense and disappointed she was month after month. Then finally she was pregnant. Our daughter Lila was born when Sam was 31. I cried the moment I saw her, those tiny hands, the impossibly loud wail, the little scrunched-up face that made me feel like I'd found the purpose of my entire life. Sam had a rough labor, but when it was over, she just looked at Lila and whispered, "She's perfect." And she was. Except, over time, something started gnawing at me. At first, it was small things. Lila didn't really look like me. I know babies can change a lot, and genetics are weird, but she had jet black hair and piercing grey eyes when both Sam and I are light-haired, with blue and green eyes, respectively. People would comment on it. "Wow, where'd those eyes come from?" Sam would laugh and say, "Must be a recessive gene." She had an answer for everything, and I always took her word for it. But when Lila turned 3, the doubt bloomed into obsession. Her face? It wasn't mine. Her laugh sounded like someone I couldn't place. She had little quirks, like the way she tapped her fork 3 times before eating, or hummed to herself when she was anxious, that I knew didn't come from either of us. I told myself I was crazy. I even brought it up to my therapist once and immediately backpedaled. Who DNA tests their own kid? Me. That's who. I did. I ordered a discreet test online when Sam was out of town for a work conference. I took a sample from Lila's toothbrush, did my own, mailed it, and tried to forget about it. For 2 weeks, I lived in an anxiety-fueled fog. half hoping it would come back normal so I could finally quiet that voice in my head. It didn't. The results came back with a glaring, horrifying line at the top. Probability of paternity. 0%. I thought I was going to throw up. I checked it 20 times, called the company, confirmed the sample numbers. It was real. I wasn't Lila's father. The rage that hit me wasn't even about cheating. At first, it was about her. Lila. This child I had rocked to sleep, read books, taught to ride a bike, bandaged scraped knees for. I loved her more than anything, and suddenly I didn't know who she was to me. Was I still her father? Was I supposed to be? I sat on that knowledge for days. Couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. Every time Sam walked in the room, I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I waited, I planned, I decided I needed to know everything. Not just the paternity, I needed to know the scope of the betrayal. So I hired a private investigator. What he found broke me. Back during the year we were trying to get pregnant, Sam was sleeping with her boss, a married man in his 40s with 2 kids of his own. Let's call him Greg. Greg and Sam had been working long hours together, and she told me he was just a mentor, helping her rise in the company. Turns out, he was helping her in a lot more ways than professional growth. Their affair lasted nearly a year, and according to the PI, it stopped shortly after Sam got pregnant. I guess she rolled the dice. Maybe she even thought I was the father. Or maybe she knew and just decided to lie forever. When I confronted her, it wasn't explosive. It was cold. I sat her down and showed her the DNA results. Her face drained of color. Then she whispered, "I can explain." But she didn't explain. She justified, said she was lonely, that I was emotionally unavailable during that time because of work, that Greg was a mistake and she panicked when she got pregnant. She said she thought it was mine. Then she said she wasn't sure. Then she admitted she knew it probably wasn't. I asked why she didn't. Tell me. She said she didn't want to lose me, that I was a better father than Greg ever could be, that I was meant to be Lila's dad, even if not by blood. I kicked her out, took Lila to my mother's. I haven't spoken to Sam since except through lawyers, but here's where it gets worse. I contacted Greg. At first he denied everything, then I sent him photos, text records from the PI. He broke, told me to never contact him again. Then he told his wife. Now their marriage is ruined. His wife called me sobbing, said she felt like an idiot, said Sam and Greg had even gone on work trips together while she was home with their kids. She wanted to meet Lila, to see the child that shattered her life. I said no. Then my in-laws got involved. Sam told them I was going insane, accusing her of things that weren't true. When I sent them the DNA test, they went radio silent. Then Sam's mom showed up at my door crying, begging me not to punish Lila for Sam's sins. She said blood didn't make someone a father, that I had raised her, that I couldn't take that away. My own parents are furious. My dad says, I need to man up and work it out for the child's sake. My mom is just confused. Friends are divided. Some say I should forgive. Others say I should run. And me? I don't know what the hell I am anymore. I love Lila. She's still my daughter in every way that matters except biology. But every time I look at her now, I see the affair. I see the lie. I see a life built on betrayal. I don't know what to do. I've filed for divorce. I've requested temporary custody. But I can't decide if I want to fight to keep Lila with me, or if I'm doing more damage by staying in her life. She's only 7. She doesn't know. She still calls me Daddy, and asks why Mommy isn't home anymore. So Reddit, am I the a-hole for blowing up 3 families with 1 DNA test? Was it right to uncover the truth? Or have I destroyed everything for nothing? Am I the a-hole for uncovering my husband's second family and telling his other wife everything, ruining both our lives? I, 32F, didn't mean to become the main character in someone else's nightmare. I didn't go looking for secrets or to destroy anyone. But once I saw the cracks, I couldn't unsee them, and once I pulled one thread, everything unraveled. I've been married to James, 35M, for nearly 10 years. We met when I was 22 and he was 25. He was charming, magnetic, protective in a way I mistook for stability. He had a good job in tech, dressed well, knew how to command a room. I was still finishing college and working part-time at a bookstore. He swept me off my feet. We got married after 2 years of dating. Our wedding was small but elegant, and from that day on, I built my life around us. We bought a townhouse in the suburbs, we got a dog, we hosted dinner parties. He told me he wasn't sure he wanted kids yet, but I was okay with waiting. I had dreams too, photography, travel, maybe starting my own business. He supported those dreams, in theory, but there was always a wall. Always something I couldn't quite name. A part of him I never fully saw. He traveled a lot for work. Client meetings in DC, training sessions in Denver, conferences in Toronto. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He brought home receipts, posted selfies in hotel rooms, texted me from airports. The only odd thing was his obsessive need for privacy. He never let me near his work laptop. He wouldn't link his calendar to mine. He always kept his phone on silent, face down, with biometric locks. I told myself I was being paranoid. Until one day, 6 months ago, when I got a DM from a woman named Elise. The message was short. "Hi, I don't mean to alarm you, but I think your husband is my husband too." I thought it was a scam. I almost deleted it. But something about the wording and direct, quiet, terrified, made me respond. I said, "Excuse me." She replied with a photo of James. Same face, same smile, same mole above his collarbone. But he was wearing a wedding band I'd never seen before, and holding a toddler. Elise told me her James was 36. He'd lied to me about his age, apparently. They'd met 8 years ago, married for 6. They lived in upstate New York. She was a nurse. They had 2 kids, a 4-year-old girl and a 1-year-old boy. She thought he was traveling for work every other week. My hands went numb. My vision blurred. I felt like I was outside my body. I didn't believe her. I couldn't. But I also couldn't stop myself. I started digging. I went through old emails, checked flight receipts, scoured his social media, cross-checked dates. I found gaps, repeats, lies, trips that overlapped with birthdays, excuses that no longer added up. And then the worst. I found a second Facebook account under his full legal name, but with a different city listed. He was friends with Elise, with her parents, with their kids. He had 2 lives. He had 2 entire lives, one with me, one with her. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I just sat there in the dark for hours, trying to process the impossibility of it all. Every memory we'd built, our wedding, our anniversary trips, our lazy Sundays, suddenly felt like a performance, like I'd been cast, in a role I didn't audition for. The next time he left for a conference, I followed him. I called in sick at work, booked a separate hotel, and watched him. He didn't go to a conference. He went home, to her. I watched from my car as he hugged. His kids kissed her, brought in groceries. I watched him mow the lawn. I watched him live his real life and the one I wasn't a part of. I took photos, videos, I recorded everything. Then I went back to my hotel and screamed into a pillow until my throat bled. I didn't confront him right away. Instead, I met with Elise. We arranged to meet at a small diner halfway between our towns. She walked in with dark circles under her eyes and shaking hands. She looked like me, not physically but emotionally, like someone who hadn't slept in weeks, like someone who'd lost the scaffolding of her identity. We talked for hours. We compared anniversaries, vacations, texts, lies. He'd proposed to both of us the same way, same line, same ring. He gave us identical necklaces one year, said it reminded him of our light. He told us both his mother was dead. She wasn't. We found her Facebook. She just didn't know about me. He had excuses for everything. Business, trips, dead phones, delayed flights. He missed my grandmother's funeral because he got stuck at a client meeting. That day, Elise said, they went apple picking. He missed her sister's wedding because he had a migraine. That day, he took me to a winery. We laughed, not because it was funny, but because if we didn't, we'd break. When I finally confronted him, it wasn't dramatic. He came home one night. I was waiting at the kitchen table with a folder. He saw my face and froze. I said one sentence. "How long were you going to keep this up?" At first, he tried to lie. Said Elise was a delusional ex. I slid the photos across the table. He didn't look at them. Then he said, You weren't supposed to find out. That was it. Not "I'm sorry," not "I love you," not even "let me explain," just that I kicked him out. Filed for divorce, froze our accounts. I sent Elise copies of every document I had. She filed too. We both burned it to the ground. But now it's hell. His family is furious at me. Says I should have kept quiet for the kid's sake. That men make mistakes and I didn't have to ruin him. Elise's family is split. Some support her. Others think I tainted their grandkids' legacy by airing dirty laundry. James has gone into hiding. He's lost his job. His name is starting to pop up on local gossip forums. Friends are picking sides. My inbox is a war zone. Elise and I talk weekly, trauma bonded. She's trying to rebuild her life while co-parenting with a man she now loathes. I'm in therapy. I'm haunted by how many years I lost, and yet there's this guilt, because if I'd just stayed silent, he could have kept providing for her kids. Could have kept lying, yes, but lying stably. Instead, now 2 households are shattered. 2 women are broken. 2 children will grow up knowing their father is a fraud. So Reddit. Am I the a-hole for tearing everything down and exposing him? Should I have stayed quiet for the kids, for Elise, or was this justice? Am I the a-hole for exposing a 20-year family secret at my father's retirement party and tearing everything apart? I, 34F, may have just destroyed my entire family with a single toast. Let me back up. My father, Alan, 63M, recently retired from a high-powered corporate position he'd held for over 30 years. He's always been the definition of stoic, respected, sharp, emotionally cold. People admire him, even fear him a little. Growing up, he wasn't the warmest dad. He provided, yes. We had a nice house, good schools, vacations. But affection? Understanding. Those were doled out in microscopic rations, if at all. My mother, Janice, 61F, is a polite ghost of a woman. Sweet, but spineless. Her entire identity revolves around being a good wife and making things look perfect from the outside. We're talking pearls at breakfast levels of Stepford. She'd sweep everything under the rug and tell us to smile, even if the house was burning down. I have one older brother, Trent, 36M. Golden child. Star athlete, straight-A student, dad's shadow. Everything I wasn't. I was the artsy one, the emotional one, the handful. Dad and I clashed constantly. Trent could do no wrong, and I was the family screw-up because I went to art school instead of business like Dad wanted. But despite the tension, I stayed connected. I came home for holidays. I played the dutiful daughter. Even helped plan Dad's surprise retirement party last month. A swanky affair at a rented venue with catered food, string lights, a slideshow of his accomplishments. The whole deal. That night, I was supposed to give a toast. Everything was going fine. Well, as fine as it could be when your entire extended family is pretending to adore a man who barely knows their birthdays. Speeches were made, people clapped. Dad stood there, soaking in the applause like a god. And then it was my turn. I got up there, glass in hand, and looked out at all these faces. People who believed the image of our family was real, and I snapped, because you see, I knew a secret. One I'd learned only months before, a secret that changed everything. It started innocently. I was cleaning out some of my old boxes from my parents' attic. Mom had asked me to help her declutter before the party. In one of the boxes, I found a folder. Inside was a stack of letters, handwritten. One's love letters from my mother and to another man, dated 1988 to 1992. The content was unmistakable. These weren't flings. This was a full-blown love affair. She wrote about longing for him, about their weekends together, about how her husband was too cold to notice. She mentioned me. And that's when I felt my stomach turn. One line read, "Our daughter looks more like you every day. Sometimes I think Alan suspects, but he's too proud to confront me." I read it again and again. Our daughter, I did the math. I was born in 1990. Right in the thick of the affair, I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. For weeks, I sat on the information, unsure of what to do. I confided in my best friend, who encouraged me to take a DNA test, so I did. First, I got mine. Then I convinced Trent to take one under the guise of family heritage. The results came back 2 weeks before the retirement party. We were only half siblings, different fathers. Suddenly everything made sense. Why Dad had always treated me like a stray someone left on the porch. Why he never praised me, never hugged me unless someone was watching. Why Trent and I looked so different. I wasn't his daughter. Not really. I confronted my mother. She broke down, admitted everything. She'd fallen in love with a man named Robert, a college professor she'd met while auditing art classes. The same year she got pregnant with me. She claimed she never meant for it to go that far, that she stayed for stability, that she was doing what was best for the family. When I asked if Dad knew, she said she didn't think so, that he might have suspected but never brought it up. So I asked, "Did you ever consider what it did to me, growing up unwanted?" She just cried, and that brings us back to the party. I got up, raised my glass and started the toast. I said, "Here's to my father, the man who taught me discipline, ambition and silence, a man who never missed a day of work, but who often missed birthdays, a man who gave his family everything except warmth, a man who raised 2 children, even if only one was truly his." The room went still. Then I continued, "Dad, I recently found some letters Mom wrote back in the day and I took a DNA test. Turns out I'm not your biological daughter, but you already knew that, didn't you? You knew, and you made sure I felt it every single day." Gasps. Utensils dropped. My mother turned white. Trent stared at me like I was a stranger. My father, he just sipped his whiskey. Then he said, without emotion, "I always knew," and walked out. I left shortly after, leaving behind a room full of stunned relatives and a family shattered into silence. Since then, everything has imploded. My mom is begging me to apologize, says I humiliated them, that I should have brought it up privately. Trent is furious, says I disrespected our father on his big night and that I've torched decades of peace. Some relatives think I'm brave. Others have ghosted me, but here's the thing. I tried to do this quietly, but they weren't listening. I've spent my whole life bending over backwards to keep the family image intact. I buried my pain. I accepted being the outsider. I accepted his coldness, all because I thought I was difficult or not enough. Turns out, I was just a living reminder of a lie they all silently agreed to uphold. So, Reddit, am I the a-hole for exposing it all in one brutal speech? Am I the a-hole for exposing my twin brother's secret at his wedding and ruining everything? Let me paint you a picture. My twin brother, James, 31M, and I, 31F, have always been close. Not the kind of close where we shared everything, because James has always been secretive, but close enough that we survived a pretty rough childhood together and looked out for each other when no one else did. Our parents were emotionally unavailable at best, toxic at worst. We learned early how to be each other's anchor. He was the charming golden child. I was the quiet one, the fixer, the one who made things run smoothly behind the scenes while he got applause. It never bothered me. Not really. I was used to being invisible. And to be fair, James did show me love in his own way. He defended me from bullies. He let me crash in his apartment when my last relationship imploded. He said he'd always have my back, and I believed him. Fast forward to about 3 years ago, when he introduced me to his girlfriend, now fiancée, Lena. 22. She was bright, funny, and clearly adored James. They had electric chemistry. I liked her instantly. She asked me to be her bridesmaid when they got engaged, and I was touched. For once I felt like I was part of something magical, not just a bystander, but involved in a celebration of love that felt genuine. But things started to feel off about 6 months before the wedding. It started with whispers. A friend of mine who works in HR at James's company mentioned she'd seen him out to dinner, multiple times, with a woman who definitely wasn't Lena. She assumed I knew, but when I asked more, she realized I didn't. She apologized. I laughed it off. I told myself it was probably work-related. Then a few weeks later, I saw it with my own eyes. I was downtown for an appointment, and as I walked by a little Italian restaurant, there was James, tucked into a corner booth, holding hands with a woman I'd never seen before. They were laughing, leaning into each other. It was intimate, not friendly, definitely not work-related. I froze. I didn't confront him. I didn't take a photo. I just walked away, feeling like the sidewalk had dropped out from under me. That night I called him, asked how his day went. He said, "Busy at the office, nothing interesting." I didn't say a word about what I saw. I just listened to him lie to me. I spent the next few months torn between loyalty and disgust. He'd never cheated on anyone before. Not to my knowledge. Lena was good. She didn't deserve this. I wanted to believe maybe there was some reasonable explanation. Maybe it was a one-time lapse. But then I found the proof. James asked me to grab something from his home office while we were prepping wedding decorations at his house. I opened his drawer and found a small velvet box, not for Lena. The engraving on the tag inside said, "To R." My real beginning. Not Lena. I felt sick. I dug deeper, and I found a second phone hidden in the bottom drawer. The messages were explicit, romantic, dates, photos. She called him Jamie. They had a life together. Her name was Renee, and from what I could tell, they'd been seeing each other for nearly a year. He told her he was stuck in an engagement with Lena, but couldn't break it off yet. There were even plans to elope after the wedding. After, not before. That was when I snapped. I confronted James the next day. He looked ashamed for about 10 seconds. Then he got defensive. Said it was complicated, that Lena wouldn't understand, that Renee gets him in a way Lena never could. He begged me not to say anything. Told me he'd end things with Renee after the wedding. I said, "Why not end it now?" He told me flat out, "Because I don't want to lose what Lena brings to the table." Translation? Lena's dad is wealthy, owns a string of successful businesses, and has promised to bring James into the family company post-wedding. James wanted the status, not the marriage. He was marrying for money and keeping Renee as a side piece. I told him he was a monster. He told me I didn't understand what it's like to actually have ambition. That was the moment I decided I wasn't going to stay silent, but I didn't go nuclear right away. I waited. I wanted him to sweat. I wanted him to feel safe, secure, smug, right up until the edge of the cliff. I stood in dress fittings, helped write speeches, smiled for photos, all while knowing I was going to blow it all up. The night before the wedding, Lena pulled me aside. She was glowing, nervous. She said, "I feel like I've waited my whole life for this." She thanked me for always being supportive. I nearly cried. It would have been easier if she'd been a bad person, but she wasn't. She was good, and I was going to destroy her world. But I kept telling myself, better a moment of pain than a lifetime of lies. The wedding day arrived, outdoor venue, 100 guests, everything picture perfect. I walked down the aisle with the other bridesmaids, took my spot, heart pounding. The ceremony began. The vows started. Lena went first. Hers were beautiful. James started his. Halfway through, I stepped forward and interrupted. People gasped. James froze. Lena looked confused. I said in a clear voice, "Before we let this continue, I think the bride deserves to know that the groom has a second fiancée named Renee, whom he's been seeing for the past year. He plans to elope with her. He told her this marriage is for money." The silence was instant, then chaos. Lena stood there in shock. Her dad stood up, furious. James tried to grab the mic from me. I handed Lena the second phone, which I'd charged, and queued up with messages and photos. She scrolled. Her hands shook. Then she slapped James across the face and walked out. Her dad followed. Guests began to whisper and scatter. James screamed at me, called me every name in the book, said I'd ruined his life, that I was jealous, that I was a bitter little sister who could never stand to see him win. He shoved over a chair. 2 groomsmen had to hold him back. I left, drove home, cried the entire way, shaking. It's been 3 weeks. James hasn't spoken to me since. Our parents are furious at me for airing private matters in public. They said I should have told Lena in private if I had to get involved. A few of our extended family members have cut me off for embarrassing them. Lena's family, meanwhile, reached out to thank me. Lena herself sent a short message saying, "You saved me. I don't know how to thank you, but thank you." James lost everything. The marriage, the job opportunity. Renee dumped him after realizing he lied to her too. He never told her he was actually going through with the wedding. He's alone now. And angry. So read it. Am I the a-hole for what I did? Am I the a-hole for telling my sister I won't attend her wedding because she's marrying my ex-fiancé? Let me start off by saying that I, 29F, am not dramatic by nature. I avoid conflict when I can, and I've always tried to be the peacekeeper in our family. I'm not perfect, but I've never been the type to explode or make things all about me. I let a lot of things slide that I shouldn't have, especially when it comes to my younger sister, Katie, 26F, who has a long history of stepping on toes, let's say, but nothing prepared me for this. Nothing. So the backstory. I dated my ex-fiancé, Mark, 30M, for almost 6 years. We met in college, had a whirlwind romance that settled into a strong partnership, and got engaged 3 years ago. I thought he was my forever person. We had talked about kids, houses, growing old together, all the things people talk about when they're in love. Mark had some commitment issues, sure, but I figured we were working through them. I was patient, maybe too patient. We broke up about 1.5 years ago and it crushed me. Mark called off the wedding out of nowhere. His explanation? He felt trapped and unsure and wanted to explore who he was outside of a relationship. I was devastated. I didn't eat or sleep properly for weeks. My world fell apart. He moved out, and I stayed in our apartment for a while before I couldn't take it anymore and moved back in with my parents for a few months. During that time, Katie was weirdly absent. She sent a few "you okay" texts, but didn't come. Over, didn't call, nothing. I figured she was just giving me space. I didn't press it. About 8 months after the breakup, I started hearing little things from mutual friends that made my stomach churn. Someone mentioned seeing Mark and Katie at a bar together. Another friend thought they spotted them at a concert. I confronted Katie once, half joking, and she laughed it off like I was crazy. "Mark? You? No way," she said. "He's like a brother to me." She made it sound so absurd that I felt ashamed for even suspecting it. Then 2 months ago, Katie invited me to brunch. She seemed nervous. That should have been my first clue. I remember the way she looked, her hands shaking as she reached for her mimosa, the way she kept glancing at the people around us like she was afraid someone would overhear. Then she dropped the bomb. She and Mark were together. Had been for a while now. She wouldn't say how long, but from her tone and body language, I knew it went back to at least shortly after our breakup. She said they didn't plan for it to happen, that one night they just talked for hours and realized they had a connection. She claimed they tried to suppress it out of respect for me, but couldn't deny their feelings. I don't remember much after that. I think I paid my half of the check. I know I walked out. I remember sitting in my car for what felt like forever, just staring out the window, trying to process what I'd heard. My sister, my little sister, the same one who cried when I got engaged because she was so happy for me. The same sister I shared a room with for years, the same one who used to ask me for dating advice in high school. She was now with the man I had once planned to marry, and she had been with him, emotionally, physically, or both, while I was still putting myself back together. I didn't speak to either of them after that. I blocked Mark on everything. I didn't respond to Katie's texts. My parents begged me to talk to her, to not throw away family over a guy. My mum especially was torn. She kept saying she didn't condone it, but also, love is love. And they seem happy. Then last week, the final straw. I got a wedding invitation in the mail, a fancy cream-colored envelope with gold lettering. "Katie and Mark request the pleasure of your company." I felt like I'd been slapped. My sister is marrying my ex-fiancé, the man I was supposed to marry, the man I still sometimes dream about, and she had the audacity to invite me to their wedding. I lost it. I called her, the first time I'd spoken to her in weeks, and told her that not only would I not be attending her circus of a wedding, but that I didn't want her in my life anymore. I told her she was selfish, cruel, and disgusting. I told her I hoped every time she looked at Mark, she remembered what she did to her sister. She started crying, saying I was being unfair, that I was weaponizing family against her, and that she just wants me to be happy for her. I laughed. I couldn't help it. Happy for this. Now my phone is blowing up. My mom says I went too far. My dad's trying to stay out of it. My older brother thinks it's gross but says I shouldn't. Cut off Katie entirely. Even a few mutual friends think I should have handled it more maturely and at least been civil. But I don't feel civil. I feel betrayed, violated, like something sacred was stolen from me and paraded around like a trophy. She's wearing my ring now, not literally the same one, but close enough. She's walking down the aisle to marry the man I spent years loving, and she expects me to smile and clap. So Reddit, am I the a-hole for refusing to go to their wedding and cutting off my sister? Edit 1. Since this blew up, let me answer a few common questions. Did Katie cheat with Mark while we were still engaged? I don't have definitive proof. But the timing, the way she avoided me after the breakup, the rumors, the weird vibes, it all adds up. She says they connected emotionally after we split. Do I believe her? No. 2. Are they using any of my wedding plans? Funny you. Ask. Yes, they're using the same venue I had originally booked, the same one I cancelled after our engagement ended. I got a refund, but the emotional hit was brutal. Katie says it's just a coincidence. Sure, befreaked. What about family holidays, events, etc.? I've already told my parents I won't attend anything that involves both of them. That's my boundary. They're not thrilled, but I'm not budging. Why did Mark break it off with me? I think now I know the real reason. He was already eyeing Katie. Maybe more than eyeing Edit 2, final update I. Got a call from my mum yesterday. Apparently Katie had a meltdown after I told her I was done with her. She's accusing me of trying to ruin her big day. She even had the audacity to say I'm jealous because I couldn't make it work with Mark. I told my mum if that's the narrative she wants to spin, she can spin it all the way out of my life. Then came the big reveal. Katie was seeing Mark while I was still with him. My mom admitted it after some wine-fueled confession. Apparently, she walked in on the two of them in a compromising position shortly after the breakup, and never told me because she didn't want to hurt me more. So yeah, they cheated. No question anymore. I don't even know what to do with that information. My therapist says it's okay to grieve the loss of a sibling relationship like a death, because that's what it feels like. The wedding is in 2 months. I won't be there, I won't send a card, I won't acknowledge it in any way. Katie texted me a photo of her in her wedding dress yesterday. I didn't open it. I blocked her number. I'm not doing this anymore. Maybe I'm the a-hole in someone's eyes, but if I am, I'd rather be that than a doormat verdict, Reddit. Am I the a-hole? The family wedding fallout. Hi everyone, this is my first time posting here, and honestly I'm a little nervous because this situation has torn my family apart, and I'm not sure if I'm the a-hole or if everyone else is. I'm going to try to explain everything as clearly as I can because there's a lot of background and drama involved. Background. I, 32F, come from a pretty traditional family. We're originally from a small town, and my parents have always been very involved in our lives. I have 2 siblings, an older brother, 35M, and a younger sister, 28F. We've always been close, but things started to get complicated a few years ago. My older brother, Jake, married his high school sweetheart, Emily, about 8 years ago. They seemed happy, but over time, their relationship became strained. Jake is very career-driven and often works long hours, while Emily is more family-oriented and wanted to start a family sooner than Jake was ready for. They eventually had 2 kids, but their marriage was rocky. My younger sister, Lisa, is a free spirit. She moved to a big city, became an artist, and has a very different lifestyle compared to the rest of us. She's always been the black sheep in the family, but we love her. The wedding. Now here's where the drama starts. I got engaged to my fiancé, Mark, 34M, about a year ago. We've been together for 5 years, and we're really happy. Mark is great with my family, and we were all excited about the wedding. We decided to have the wedding in our hometown because it's where our families are, and it felt right to celebrate there. We sent out invitations to everyone, including Jake, Emily, and their kids, as well as Lisa. About 6 months before the wedding, Emily reached out to me privately. She told me that Jake was going through a really tough time and that their marriage was on the rocks again. She asked if I could hold off on inviting them to the wedding because she didn't want the kids to be upset if their parents were fighting. During the event, I was taken aback. I told Emily that the wedding was a happy occasion and I wanted my brother and his family there. I also said that if Jake and Emily wanted to work through their issues, the wedding day shouldn't be the reason to exclude them. Emily insisted it was best for the kids, and she seemed pretty emotional about it. I talked to Jake separately, and he said he wanted to come but wasn't sure if Emily would let him. I was stuck in the middle. The conflict, fast forward to 2 months before the wedding. Emily sent me a text saying that Jake wasn't allowed to come to the wedding because of their separation. She said she was going to bring the kids, but not Jake. I was shocked and upset. I told her that I couldn't exclude my brother from my wedding, especially without talking to him directly. Jake called me that night, clearly upset. He said that Emily was trying to control the situation and that he wanted to be there for me. And Mark. He asked if he could come with the kids, and I said absolutely yes. Emily then sent a group message to my family, including my parents and Lisa, saying that she wouldn't attend the wedding if Jake was there because it would be too painful for her. She also said that Jake was being selfish and only thinking about himself. This message caused a huge rift. My parents were divided. My mum sided with Emily, saying she was trying to protect the kids, while my dad said Jake had every right to be there. Lisa was furious at Emily and said she was being manipulative. My decision. After a lot of back and forth, I decided to invite Jake and the kids to the wedding, and I told Emily that if she chose not to come, that was her decision. I told her I loved her and hoped she would reconsider, but I couldn't control her choices. Emily didn't come to the wedding. She sent a gift and a card but stayed away. Jake came with the kids, and the day was beautiful but bittersweet. The fallout. Since the wedding, Emily has barely spoken to me. She's posted vague messages on social media about family betrayal and choosing sides. My parents are still divided, and Lisa has stopped speaking to Emily altogether. Jake is grateful I stood by him, but the family atmosphere is tense. I feel like I did the right thing, but I also wonder if I should have handled it differently to avoid all this drama. So Reddit. Am I the a-hole for inviting my brother to my wedding against his wife's wishes? Should I have tried harder to keep the peace? Or was standing by my brother the right call? Am I the a-hole for cutting my sister off after she ruined my wedding by causing a scene over my father's will? I'm Natalie, 32F, and I've always had a strained relationship with my sister Hannah, 29F. We're not the typical sibling duo who always have each other's backs. In fact, we've spent most of our lives bickering and competing for my parents' attention. It's always felt like I'm the responsible one, and she's the wild one who gets away with pretty much anything. Over the years, I've tried to be patient, but lately I feel like I've reached my breaking point. Let me start with a bit of background. I met Eric, 34M, in college, and we've been together for about 8 years now. We're both professionals and have been living together for 5 years. We recently got engaged, and after months of planning, we finally had our wedding. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, and for the most part, it was. However, there's one incident that completely overshadowed the day and caused me to reevaluate my relationship with my sister. Now, our father, Daniel, passed away 3 years ago. His death was sudden, and we were both devastated. After his passing, there were a lot of unresolved issues, mostly concerning his will. He was a very private person, and though my mother Marissa is alive, we had a strained relationship with our dad for a while before his death. When he passed, we discovered that he had left the majority of his estate to my mother, but there were some other provisions that caught us off guard. For example, he had written me into his will, leaving me his vintage car, which had been a huge part of his life. It wasn't a huge financial asset, but it was incredibly sentimental. My sister was left out of that specific provision, though she did receive a significant amount of money, as well as their family home, which was worth a lot more than my car. She didn't seem to care much about the car, but she took issue with the fact that I was named in the will at all. From what I've gathered, she felt entitled to everything because in her mind, she was the favored child who deserved it all. This conflict surrounding the will has been an ongoing issue. Hannah never outright accused me of anything, but she would frequently make passive-aggressive remarks about how I got the car and how lucky I was to have it. Whenever we spoke about Dad's passing or the inheritance, she'd often imply that I didn't deserve it, and that somehow I had taken things from her, even though I had no control over what he decided. This issue was still unresolved when my wedding planning began. Throughout the months leading up to the wedding, I made it clear to my sister that I didn't want any drama. I told her that while I understood that she was still grieving Dad's death and that there were unresolved feelings, I wanted to keep the focus on my wedding. I told her I didn't want her to cause any unnecessary drama or bring up the will. During the event, I even asked her if she'd be okay with putting it behind us for the day, just for the wedding. She agreed, but I had no idea that she had been simmering with resentment all this time. Our wedding day arrived, and everything was perfect. Eric and I exchanged vows, the ceremony was beautiful, and we were surrounded by friends and family. The reception was going smoothly, and I thought everything was going to go as planned. But about halfway through, when the speeches started, things took a turn for the worse. My sister was one of the people giving a speech. She got up and started talking about how important family was, how happy she was for me, and how she had always been there for me. It all sounded fine until she paused, looked at the crowd, and said something that completely stunned me. You know, I've always been the one who has supported Natalie, even when she didn't deserve it. I've always been the one who was left out of things, and I never got the recognition I deserved. So it's hard for me to stand here today and watch my sister get everything, especially when our father's will was so unfair. The room went silent, and I could see everyone awkwardly shifting in their seats. I was mortified. Eric's face went pale, and my mother looked like she was about to cry. I could feel the tension in the air. Hannah went on to talk about how she felt betrayed by my father's will, how she deserved more, and how I was just lucky to have gotten the car, despite it not being something I wanted to bring up at the wedding. She made sure everyone knew she felt left out, and that she had been robbed of the things she should have had. She even went so far as to accuse me of manipulating our father into giving me the car because I was the golden child. I was absolutely speechless. I felt like I was in a nightmare. I thought my sister and I were going to have a respectful day, and here she was, ruining it in front of everyone. She was clearly drunk by the end of her speech, but that didn't stop her from continuing to berate me. She went on to accuse me of being selfish and uncaring, and she claimed that I never supported her during the grieving process. At this point, I had had enough. I stood up and confronted her in front of everyone. I told her that it was not the time or the place to air out her grievances, especially on my wedding day. I said that I had tried to be understanding of her feelings, but that this was beyond unacceptable. I told her that I had nothing to do with the will, and I wasn't responsible for what Dad chose to leave to anyone. I also reminded her that she had been given the family home, which was far more valuable than anything I had received. She started crying, saying I was being cruel and heartless. My mother and some of the other guests tried to intervene, but Hannah stormed out of the venue, slamming the door behind her. It was an incredibly awkward and tense situation, and I felt like I had just been punched in the stomach. I didn't hear from her for several days after that. When I finally did get a message, she told me that I was an awful person for embarrassing her in front of our family, and that I had ruined her reputation. She claimed that I was overreacting, and that all she wanted was some acknowledgement of her pain. I've since cut contact with her. I've told her that I can't tolerate the way she treated me, especially on my wedding day. I've told her that I'm tired of the constant resentment and bitterness, and that if she can't respect me and my boundaries, we need some space. Our mother has been caught in the middle, telling me that I should just let it go and that I'm being too harsh on my sister. Some of our other family members have told me that I should be the bigger person, but I just can't bring myself to forgive her for what she did. So, am I the a-hole for cutting my sister off after she ruined my wedding by causing a scene over my father's will? Am I the a-hole for refusing to let my sister-in-law stay with us after her behavior at our wedding? This situation has me feeling conflicted, and I need some outside perspectives to figure out if I'm being too harsh. I'm Megan, 29F, and I married Ethan, 31M, about 6 months ago. Our wedding was the event of the year in our family, and we were over the moon about it. We spent months planning every detail to make sure everything went smoothly. My side of the family was very involved, and we had a great turnout. However, my husband's side was a bit more complicated. Specifically, Ashley, 34F, my sister-in-law, caused a lot of tension. To give some context, Ashley has always had a complicated relationship with me. She and Ethan's other siblings, he has 3 brothers, including one who's married to a lovely woman, have a very close-knit bond. While that's perfectly fine, I've always felt like an outsider. Ashley, in particular, has always been dismissive of me, never offering any support when I've tried to get close. Over the years, she's made some snide remarks about my appearance, my career and my relationship with Ethan. It's always been passive-aggressive, and I've tried to just let it go. But when it came to the wedding, things reached a breaking point. During the wedding planning process, Ashley made it clear that she didn't think I was good enough for Ethan. She made a point to question every decision I made, from the guest list to the decorations. There were moments when I tried to involve her in planning, like asking her opinion on the menu, but she would always brush me off with sarcastic comments or suggestions that were passive-aggressive at best. She was also very critical of my bridesmaid dresses, saying they were too plain or too expensive. I couldn't tell if she was trying to be helpful or just trying to undermine me. When the big day came, things only got worse. Ashley showed up late, made a scene at the reception by drawing attention to her own outfit, which was extremely over the top and, frankly, out of place for the event. She was wearing something that could have been mistaken for a mini dress more suited for a nightclub than a wedding. When I tried to talk to her, she just shrugged me off and continued to act as if she were the center of attention. At one point, during our first dance, she decided to make an uninvited appearance on the dance floor and started pulling some ridiculous moves in an attempt to outshine us. It was embarrassing, and I could feel people staring, which made me furious. It felt like she was purposefully trying to derail one of the most important moments of my life. But that wasn't the worst part. Toward the end of the reception, she came up to me and told me she had something to say in private. I was already emotionally drained and trying to enjoy the last few moments of my wedding day, but I agreed to talk to her in a quieter corner. I wasn't prepared for what she said. Ashley told me that she thought Ethan could do better than me. She claimed that he had settled for someone like me and that I wasn't good enough for him. She went on to say that my pedestrian background and boring personality would never make me fit into the family the way she thought I should. It was all delivered in this venomous, subtle way, as if she was trying to help me understand my place in Ethan's life. I was absolutely stunned. I was so blindsided by her words that I couldn't even find the strength to respond. After a few moments of silence, I just told her that I didn't appreciate her opinion, and that I wasn't going to listen to anything else she had to say. I turned around and walked away, completely crushed by what she had just said. Ethan didn't know about this conversation until later, and when I told him, he was furious. He couldn't believe his sister had acted that way, especially on our wedding day. He said he would speak to her and set boundaries, but when he did, Ashley just shrugged it off, claiming that she had been drunk and that I was overreacting. She didn't even apologize. Now here's where things get messy. A few weeks ago, Ashley reached out to me and asked if she could stay at our place for a few days while she was in town for work. Normally, I would have been okay with it, but after everything that happened at the wedding and her treatment of me, I couldn't bring myself to welcome her into our home. I told her that I didn't feel comfortable with the idea, considering how things went between us. She was shocked and tried to tell me that I was holding a grudge. She claimed that everyone makes mistakes and I should let it go. I ended up explaining that it wasn't just about what she said at the wedding, but the cumulative effect of her behavior over the years. I told her that until she could apologize and show that she respected me and my relationship with Ethan, I wasn't going to allow her to stay with us. She got upset and called me petty and immature, saying that I was being unfair and using the wedding as an excuse to hold on to my grudge. Since then, things have been tense. Ethan is caught in the middle because he doesn't want to pick sides, but I know he's disappointed in Ashley's actions. A few family members have reached out to me, telling me that I'm being too harsh and should get over it for the sake of family. On the other hand, some of my friends are supporting me, saying that I'm justified in setting boundaries with someone who has repeatedly disrespected me. So, am I the a-hole for refusing to let my sister-in-law stay with us after her behavior at our wedding? Am I the a-hole for confronting my friend about her toxic behavior after she tried to sabotage my engagement announcement? I'm in a bit of a tough spot right now and could use some perspective on whether I'm overreacting or if I'm justified in feeling this way. Here's the situation. I'm Olivia, 26F, and I've been dating my fiancé David, 29M, for almost 3 years. We met at work and our relationship has been pretty solid. We got engaged a few months ago, and while we've been keeping the news to ourselves for the most part, we were planning to announce it to our closest friends and family at a small gathering we were hosting. Now here's where things get tricky. One of my best friends, Rachel, 27F, has always been somewhat of a complicated person. We've been friends for years and I've always tried to be there for her, even when she's been less than supportive of me. She has a tendency to make everything about herself and can be very manipulative. I've brushed it off for a long time, but recently I've started to notice just how toxic her behavior has been. To give some context, Rachel has never been in a serious relationship, and she's been vocal about her struggles with finding someone. She often makes offhand comments about how everyone around her is settling while she's still trying to figure things out. For a while, I assumed she was just joking. But the more I've thought about it, the more I've realized that there's some genuine bitterness behind her words. She has a habit of downplaying the happiness of others, especially when it comes to relationships and milestones. Leading up to our engagement announcement, I had a conversation with Rachel about the upcoming event and mentioned that we were going to share the news with a small group of friends and family. She seemed happy for us and said she couldn't wait to celebrate, but as soon as I mentioned the date of the gathering, I started noticing some strange behavior from her. The night before the announcement, Rachel texted me saying she was feeling a little under the weather and might not be able to make it. I thought it was odd because she'd been fine when we talked earlier that day, but I didn't think much of it. I told her I hoped she felt better and that we'd miss her at the celebration. The next day, we had the gathering and everything was going smoothly. People were congratulating us and we were excited to share our news. But midway through the evening, something strange happened. Rachel showed up, late as usual, and walked right up to me in front of everyone. Without even saying congratulations, she said in a loud voice, "Well, I guess this is it. You've finally got your man. I mean, I'm not sure what the rush is, but hey, you're engaged now, so I guess it's time to make it official." It was one of those comments that sounds neutral on the surface, but the way she said it, with that undercurrent of judgment, was like a slap in the face. I tried to brush it off and not let it ruin the mood, but Rachel didn't stop there. She spent the rest of the evening making passive-aggressive comments about how she wasn't sure if I was really ready for marriage, especially so young, and how rushing into things can sometimes lead to disaster. It was clear she was trying to bring a negative vibe to what should have been a joyous occasion. At one point, she even asked me in front of a group of people if I was sure I was making the right decision. She was so loud and blunt about it that I could feel the eyes of everyone in the room on us. I could tell that her comments were starting to make others uncomfortable too, but no one said anything. I was embarrassed, and I felt like my special moment was being ruined by her need to make everything about herself. After a few more snide remarks, I pulled Rachel aside and told her that I was really upset by the way she was acting. I asked her if she was jealous or if something was bothering her because it didn't feel like she was being supportive at all. She immediately got defensive and said I was being too sensitive and that I should just relax and not take everything so personally. She then turned the conversation back to her own problems, saying how hard it was for her to be around all this engagement talk when she was still single and struggling. I tried to stay calm, but I was honestly fed up. I told her that I didn't need her negativity and that if she couldn't be happy for me, I didn't want her at my celebration. Rachel got upset and said I was overreacting and ruining the friendship. She said that I should have known she'd be the way she was because that's just how she is. Since then, I've been getting messages from other friends who were at the gathering asking me if everything was okay with Rachel and if I was really upset with her. I've even had people say that Rachel has been telling them that I blew things out of proportion and that she was just trying to be honest with me. Some people have even started to side with Rachel, saying that maybe I am being too sensitive and should just forgive her for her comments. Now, I'm stuck wondering if I made the right call. Rachel is acting like I'm the one who messed up, and it feels like everyone is trying to tell me that I should just ignore her toxic behavior. But on the other hand, I've always been the one to let things slide, and maybe I've reached a breaking point. So, am I the a-hole for confronting my friend about her toxic behavior after she tried to sabotage my engagement announcement? Am I the a-hole for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of the way she treated me during my pregnancy? I feel like I'm in a lose-lose situation here, and I'm not sure if I'm being unreasonable or if my feelings are justified. Here's what happened. I'm Sarah, 30F, and I'm currently pregnant with my first child. I'm about 7 months along, and while my pregnancy hasn't been a walk in the park, I've been doing my best to stay positive. I'm excited to meet my baby, but the physical and emotional toll has been intense. Between the morning sickness, in the first trimester, the constant fatigue and the mood swings, I've had my hands full. My fiancé Mike, 32 Mo, has been great, helping me out and taking care of me when I need it. My sister Jess, 28F, is getting married in a few weeks. To be honest, I've had mixed feelings about her wedding from the beginning. Jess and I have always had a bit of a rocky relationship. Growing up, we were close, but we've drifted apart in recent years, especially after I got engaged. Jess and Mike have always had a complicated dynamic. They don't dislike each other, but they don't exactly get along either. I've been trying to stay neutral and supportive, but there's been tension between us. Leading up to her wedding, I tried to be involved as much as I could. I went with her to a few dress fittings and helped her pick out some decorations. However, there were a few things that started bothering me. Jess has always been a bit self-centered, but I tried to overlook it. I told myself that I was just being hormonal because of my pregnancy. However, her behavior became harder to ignore as time went on. First, she made some comments about my weight, not directly but more in passing, like when we were out shopping for bridesmaid dresses. She said, "I really hope these dresses will fit you, Sarah. You know, it's really hard to find cute dresses that are flattering for pregnant women, but I'm sure you'll look fine, I guess." I tried to brush it off, but it stung. She never seemed to acknowledge the challenges I was going through, even though I was doing my best to support her. Then, about a month ago, Jess invited me to a small pre-wedding dinner. I wasn't thrilled about the idea because it was mostly just her friends and a few family members, but I figured it would be a nice gesture. However, when I arrived, it became clear that I wasn't really welcome. The conversation revolved around how excited everyone was for the wedding, with Jess constantly talking about how perfect everything was going to be. But every time I tried to contribute or talk about my pregnancy, Jess would cut me off. She would say things like, "Oh, I can't even imagine being pregnant right now. It sounds so miserable. I really hope my wedding is still the most important thing for me, you know." To make matters worse, when it came time for the toast, Jess stood up and made a comment that I will never forget. She said, "I just want to thank everyone for being here, especially my sister Sarah, who's going to be a mum soon. I hope she doesn't get too distracted by her baby and forget about me on my big day." She said it in a joking tone, but everyone around the table laughed. I just sat there feeling so hurt. I knew I was being overly emotional, but at that moment I felt like Jess was completely dismissing me, my pregnancy, and everything I was going through. After that dinner, I started to feel like I wasn't just a part of her wedding. I was being treated like an accessory, as if my pregnancy was some inconvenience that had to be dealt with. I tried talking to her about how I was feeling, but when I brought it up, Jess just shrugged it off and said, "Come on, Sarah, I didn't mean anything by it. It's just my wedding, you know? It's a stressful time and I didn't mean to hurt your feelings." But to me it wasn't just a small thing. It was her attitude about my pregnancy and the way she had been treating me. It felt like she was trying to push me aside and make me feel like I wasn't important. Then things came to a head when I found out that she had planned the wedding date specifically to be on the weekend I was due to give birth. At first I thought it was a coincidence, but when I realized it wasn't, I was honestly shocked. She knew I was pregnant and she knew how important it was for me to be there for her, but she still chose that weekend. I confronted her, asking if she'd considered the timing. And she just said, well, it's the only date that worked with the venue and all the other arrangements. Besides, you're still going to come, right? When I explained that I didn't think I'd be able to attend due to the baby being due, she brushed it off like it was no big deal. Oh, it's fine. If you can't come, you can always just send a gift or something. That was the last straw for me. I felt like she didn't care about me or the baby at all. I was already dealing with the stress of my pregnancy, and now I was expected to put my own needs and my family aside just to accommodate her wedding plans. I ended up telling her that I wasn't going to attend her wedding. I explained that I didn't feel supported by her during my pregnancy, and that I felt like she had been inconsiderate of my needs. She was furious and said that I was being unreasonable and selfish, especially considering how much she had done for me in the past. She said I was making everything about me and that I was ruining her special day. My parents are on her side, telling me that I'm being dramatic and should just suck it up for the sake of family. My fiancé supports me, but he's worried about the long-term damage this might cause with my relationship with Jess. A part of me feels guilty, but another part feels like I'm finally standing up for myself and my baby. So, am I the a-hole for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of the way she treated me during my pregnancy?